Hello, Paranormal M channel viewers. Have you been having trouble sleeping lately? I'm always so happy when I read your comments saying these paranormal stories help you sleep better. Thank you so much for always supporting the channel. Drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching from. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss our latest videos. Also, a huge thank you for sending in so many of your own paranormal experiences. Alright, let's get started with today's stories. So, I've got to tell you what happened this week, because I'm still kind of laughing at myself, but also, my stomach drops every time I think about it. I'm 17, and I've only been working at this little cafe for, not even a month yet. And on Tuesday, I find out, casually, like it's nothing, that the place might be haunted. At first I'm like, okay, sure, because coworkers will mess with the new person, right? But they weren't doing the jokey vibe. My manager and a couple of the staff were dead serious, swapping stories like they'd been holding them in for ages. Stuff like doors swinging open by themselves, lights flicking on, things moving when nobody's near them. And they were telling it the way you tell something you know is real, not the way you tell a spooky story for fun. Still, I'm not a paranormal person. I've never seen a ghost. I've never felt a presence. I'm the kind of person who will blame everything on a draft, or an old building settling, or my own bad memory. So I'm listening, nodding, and thinking, maybe you're all just a little dramatic. Then later in the week, I'm talking with this coworker. Let's call her Marin, and she gets really intense about it. Like she's not teasing at all. She tells me she's seen spirits her whole life, like it's just normal for her. And then she goes, oh, and the cafe has a cat. I'm like, a cat? And she goes, not a real cat, a ghost cat. Apparently, it's this fluffy black cat that likes to do exactly what a living cat would do. Knock stuff around just to prove it can. Marin is describing it with total confidence. How it'll bump things off counters or nudge stuff until it topples. Like it's bored and mischievous. And literally minutes after she tells me this, she steps out to do something in the front, and I'm alone in the back area, and I hear it. From the dish room, this sharp clatter, like metal hitting tile, followed by that unmistakable skittering sound something makes when it bounces and slides to a stop. My whole body just freezes. I'm standing there with my heart doing that annoying thump, thump, thump thing, telling myself, it's fine, it's fine. Something shifted. It's a kitchen. Things fall. So I walk over to check, and in the corner, on the floor, there's one of our knives. Now, normally, we dry them in this narrow rack where you wedge them handle up. The blade slides into the slot and it kind of sticks there. That's why this freaked me out. It didn't make sense for the knife to just slip out. The handle is thicker than the slot, like it can't slide down through. And it takes a little effort to pull one out too. Not a struggle, but enough that it wouldn't just oops its way out. So I'm staring at it on the floor, and I'm trying to force a logical explanation into my brain, but the only one that fits is something bumped it. Something nudged it out. And the thing is, Marin had just told me about a ghost cat that knocks things over. I'm not gonna lie, I got so creeped out. I did that nervous laugh you do when you want your body to believe you're fine, but your soul is quietly packing a suitcase. And then the day just kept stacking little moments on top of that one. A bit later, a plastic lid, like from a jar, just flips off the counter. Not slides, not drifts. It pops and drops like it got flicked. I turn around so fast I almost tripped. And the weirdest part was when I was alone doing dishes again. The front was busy. Everybody was out there. I'm in the back with the running water and the clinking and all that, and I hear this sound like one of the fridges opening and closing. That soft, suction-y whoosh, and then the thud. You know? Like someone grabbed something and shut it. So I look up, expecting to see somebody back there. Nobody. And I didn't hear footsteps on the little steps that lead to the back either. It was just empty. At this point, I'm trying really hard not to spiral, but apparently the owner is moving the cafe to a new location soon, and there's been construction and packing and all this disruption. The others think it's stirring things up, like whatever's here is getting more active because everything's changing. Everyone keeps telling me, they're not dangerous, they're not mean, they just do stuff. But once you have that thought in your head, I might be sharing space with something I can't see. It's hard to relax. Because now, every time I have to go into the back storage room, where they swear there's an older man spirit who hangs around, I turn into the most polite person on earth. I literally whisper out loud, "Hi, I'm just coming in for a second. I'm not bothering you. I'm just putting this towel in the laundry bin." Like I'm announcing myself the way you would to someone's grandpa in a quiet house. And I know that sounds ridiculous, but it makes me feel better, okay? So yeah, that's my life now. I think I got mildly bullied by a ghost cat in the Dishroom. And honestly, if there has to be a ghost at my job, I'm kind of relieved it's apparently a cat with attitude instead of something sinister. Still, if you come in for coffee and you hear a clatter in the back, just don't ask me. I'll pretend I didn't hear it. Hey, so I'm going to tell you this the way it's been sitting in my chest, because I honestly don't know what to make of it yet. I'm Rena. I'm 26 and I live with my partner Eli. He's 29. In this small, kind of worn-in apartment that definitely has stories in the walls. It's not old, but it's not modern either. The doors stick a little, the floors creak in certain spots, and there are these tiny weird things that happen all the time, like a book sliding off a shelf when nobody's near it, or a loaf of bread tipping over like it's been nudged, or the toilet paper roll slowly unspooling on its own. Stuff you can laugh off, until you can't. And lately it's felt like it's not just quirky apartment stuff anymore. So yesterday I'm cleaning, just doing normal chores, and all of a sudden I hear Eli call my name from the bathroom. Not casual, like sharp and shaky. I drop what I'm doing and rush in, because the panic in his voice is the kind that makes your stomach turn before you even know what happened. He's standing there, frozen, staring into the walk-in closet that connects to the bathroom. And he goes, "Rena, your shirt, it moved." I'm like, "What do you mean it moved?" And he points. One of my shirts is hanging up, and the sleeve is lifted, not swaying, not fluttering, lifted like someone pinched it between fingers, like they were checking the fabric. And then, when he looked straight at it, it just dropped back down into place. It's winter here, so all the windows are shut. No fan running, no breeze, nothing. And we're both a good step or two away from the closet opening. I tried to lighten it because, honestly, my brain didn't want to accept what he was saying. I kind of half laughed and went, maybe it just has really good taste. And that's when it happened again. Right in front of both of us, the sleeve lifted. Slowly, like deliberately. We both just stood there. I could feel my skin go cold. And because I'm apparently the kind of person who jokes when I'm scared, I went, "Okay, wow. Maybe it likes that I'm wearing something that isn't black for once." Because that's true. Most of my clothes are dark, but this shirt was bright, like this deep teal color I almost never wear. And I swear to you, after I said it, the sleeve moved again. Not a huge motion, just enough to feel like it was responding. Eli's face looked like he'd forgotten how to breathe. I don't even remember what we said after that. I just remember backing away and shutting the closet door like that would somehow settle the universe back into place. Then today, I'm on my way home from work, and I get this message from him, full panic, like the kind where you can tell someone's hands are shaking while they type. He tells me he was in the living room and suddenly our bedroom door slammed shut. Like, hard. And right after, he heard footsteps moving away from the door, across the floor. For a second, he thought it was me getting home. But our apartment is small and open, and there's no way I could have walked in without him seeing me. He was right there. The layout doesn't allow for sneaking. And that's the moment where the fear stopped being a, "What is this?" and started becoming a, "Who is this?" But the part that's messing me up the most is our cat. 2 nights ago, Eli and I are just relaxing on the couch, watching TV. Miso is dead asleep next to me, like fully melted, paws curled, totally peaceful. And then she snaps awake like she's been shocked. Not a normal wake-up, not a stretch and yawn. She bolted upright and made this sound I've never heard come out of her. It wasn't a regular meow, it was like a terrified, strained cry. Almost like she couldn't decide whether to hide or fight. She scrambled, eyes wide, looking around like she was seeing something I couldn't. Her tail puffed up, and she wouldn't let me touch her at first. It took almost half an hour to calm her down. I held her while she trembled, and I kept whispering, "You're safe, you're safe." But I didn't fully believe it myself. She's never done that, not once. And then tonight, this is what really broke me. Eli tells me after the bedroom door slammed, he realized both bedroom doors had shut at the same time. Like the main door and the other one we sometimes keep ajar. Both closed. Like someone wanted that room sealed. And Miso was in there. Trapped. And she slept through the slam. Eli said she didn't even stir at first. But then she started having another nightmare. Worse than the last one. Twitching, crying, scrambling like she was trying to escape something in her sleep. Eli was trying to soothe her, talking softly. But she was still panicked, still locked in that fear. I'm not even home yet when he tells me this, and I'm reading the messages with this sick feeling like my chest is filling with ice. And then there's one more thing that's been hanging over us like a shadow. Last week, Eli had this night terror, so vivid he woke up sweating and shaking, about family members who've passed away. In the dream, they were there, and one of them was warning him someone else was going to die soon. He woke up and couldn't move, full sleep paralysis. That has never happened to him before. So now it's like the apartment is doing things, the doors are slamming, the footsteps are there when nobody is, my shirt sleeve is lifting like it's being handled, and my cat, my baby, is suddenly having these horrifying episodes like something is scaring her on a level we can't reach. I don't know what I believe. I don't know if this is stress, coincidence, the building settling, some weird airflow we can't explain, or something I don't even want to name. I just know I'm scared. And I keep coming back to Miso, because she can't tell me what she sees or what she feels. She just reacts. And if she's afraid in her own home, that absolutely destroys me. So, yeah, that's where I'm at. A small apartment, a handful of maybe it's nothing moments turning into, okay, this is not nothing, and me trying to figure out what to do next. Because I can handle being unsettled, but I can't handle my cat being terrified. Not her. Not my world. So, let me take you back a few years. It was 2018, and I'd flown out to Western Australia to visit my brother, Callum. He'd moved over there ages ago with his then partner Renee and their 3 kids. At the time, the kids were still little. Mia was about 9, Ethan was 7, and Jude was 4. They lived in this low, cozy bungalow in a suburb called Karawara, one of those neighborhoods where everything looks calm and ordinary, and you'd never suspect anything strange could happen inside a house like that. I was staying in the back room, down the hall from the older kid's bedroom. but far enough away that it felt like I had my own space. And right away, I noticed something off. Every single time I walked into that room, my hands would go icy. Not like, oh, it's a bit chilly, but like the warmth got sucked out of me the second I stepped inside. And the pets, normally glued to anyone new, would not go in there. They'd stand at the doorway like there was an invisible line they couldn't cross. At night, I'd hear little sounds in places that didn't make sense. A faint rattle in the aircon even when it wasn't running. A soft clink from the kitchen after everyone was asleep. But honestly, I didn't jump to ghosts. I just shrugged it off. New house, new noises, my imagination, whatever. Then, about a month into my stay, Callum left for work. He worked FIFO, 2 weeks out at the mines, then home for 1 week. So suddenly it was just Renee, the 3 kids, and me in the house. Now, Jude, the youngest, had this weird habit that we all kind of laughed off at first. Sometimes we'd be watching TV in the evening and he'd doze off, and then he'd suddenly sit up, half asleep, and mumble something like, "They're moving through the walls," and then flop right back down like nothing happened. We told ourselves it was nightmares. He was 4. He didn't watch scary stuff. Little kids say odd things. End of story. Except, it wasn't the end. A few nights after Callum left, we were having dinner at the table. Let me paint the layout for you, because it matters. The kitchen was kind of wedge-shaped, and the dining table sat tucked into a little nook off to the side. From where I was sitting, you could see straight down one hallway, the one that led toward the living room and the master bedroom. There was another hallway, too, leading to the bedrooms where I was sleeping and where the older kids slept, but you couldn't see that one from the table. I was sitting on one side, with Mia and Ethan opposite me. Jude was next to me. Renee was at the head of the table, and her back was to that visible hallway. And Jude, this is the part that still gives me chills, kept staring down that hallway. Not just glancing, staring like he was watching something come closer. At first, we all did that quiet thing where you look at each other like, is he okay? Like, what is he looking at? Then Jude's face changed. He started crying, hard, like panic crying. His whole body started trembling, and he scrambled off his chair and climbed onto Renee's lap. But even while he was clinging to her, he kept craning his neck to look over her shoulder, right down the hallway. And he just got worse, more frantic, like he couldn't breathe properly. Then he lifted his little arm, pointed down the hallway, and shouted through his sobs, "They're coming!" Not someone's coming, not a man, not a monster. They. Renee stood up so fast her chair scraped the floor. She scooped Jude up and practically ran down the hallway toward the master bedroom. And that left me there. Me, 17 years old, sitting with Mia and Ethan, who were both frozen with fear. I remember thinking, what am I supposed to do? Fight something I can't even see? It felt like forever. It was probably only a few seconds, but I swear the air got heavier, like the whole house was holding its breath. Then I grabbed Mia and Ethan by the hands, and we ran, straight down the hall to the master bedroom where Renee had gone. All 5 of us ended up in that room, shaken and wide-eyed, trying to act calm for the kids, even though none of us felt calm at all. And that night, no one slept alone. Not a chance. We all stayed together in that room, lights on longer than usual, pretending we were just having a sleepover, when really we were terrified. After that, I went into full problem-solving mode. I started looking up anything I could: psychics, cleanses, blessings, house clearings, because whether you believe in that stuff or not, I couldn't shake the feeling that fear was feeding whatever this was. And that night at the table, if something thrives on fear, it would have had a feast. Eventually, I found a woman who did home cleanses and booked her to come out. Callum was due home soon, and when we told him what happened, he didn't really buy it. Not fully. But he agreed to the cleanse anyway, mostly to keep the peace. We also agreed not to tell the kids what was happening, just in case it made things worse. The day she came, we took the kids to the park so she could do her work. Here's the thing though, she live-streamed her sessions. So while we were pushing the kids on swings and pretending everything was normal, I was watching her live video on my phone like my life depended on it. She walked through the house with all the gear, asking questions, listening, doing that intense quiet focus some people have when they're tuning in. And then she got to my room. She stood in the doorway and said, really calmly, "What do you want?" There was this pause, and then a voice came through her little device, clear as anything, saying, "The child." I swear my stomach dropped so hard I thought I was going to be sick. She didn't flinch. She just kept working, room to room, sage, salt at the windows, corners, thresholds, the whole thing. Like she was scrubbing something invisible out of the walls. When it was finally done, we came back from the park and walked into the house. And Jude, 4 years old, no context, no explanation, looked around like he was checking the air. Then he just said, casually, like he was telling you the weather, "They're gone." No one had told him, not a word, but he knew. And the strangest part? My room wasn't freezing anymore. It just wasn't. The air felt normal. The pets wandered in like nothing had ever happened. For a few minutes, I almost convinced myself it was all in our heads. Until the woman was leaving. She turned to Callum at the front door and said, almost offhandedly, "Don't bring any stones home next time." We all just stared at her. Because Callum had a habit. Every now and then, he'd bring the kids these reddish rocks from the mining site as little gifts. They weren't lying around on display either. They were tucked away in the kids' wardrobe like little treasures. We hadn't mentioned them. Not to her, not online, not in conversation. Nothing. And she told us the land he worked on was Aboriginal land, deeply old land, and sometimes objects carried things with them. She said one of the stones felt like it had pulled other energy into the house, like something had used it as a doorway. And one of the things in there, she said, had been trying to get to the youngest. Whether you believe every part of that or not, I can tell you this. The blood drained out of my face when she said it, because she shouldn't have known, and yet she did. But I've never forgotten that dinner table moment, that tiny, shaking finger pointing down a hallway, and a little voice, cracking with fear, saying, "They're coming." And honestly, I'll never look at harmless little souvenirs the same way again. Because sometimes you don't know what you're inviting in until it's already standing in the hallway. So listen, my dad had one of those encounters today that leaves you feeling silly for being shaken, right up until you remember the look on his face when he tells you. And I'm still trying to make sense of it, because whatever happened, it rattled him in a way I don't see often. A bit of context first, because it matters. My dad, let's call him Graham, has had a few strange experiences over the years. He's not the type to throw the word demon around, and he'd roll his eyes at half the spooky stuff people post online. But he does believe there's something beyond what we can see. Not necessarily angels and harps and all that, more like another layer to things, another plane maybe. He's not superstitious, but he has boundaries. Like, he won't have a spirit board in the house, just a hard no. Anyway, earlier this afternoon, Graham was heading to work by train. One of those stations where you've got platforms on opposite sides and you have to cross a footbridge to get to the right one. Normal day, bright outside, nothing dramatic. He's standing there waiting, half in his own world, when he hears this woman talking. Loudly. But not in a normal chatting on the phone way, more like the sentences didn't quite connect, like she was speaking at the air. He glances over, And that's when he notices she's pointing in his direction. Not waving, not gesturing in conversation. Pointing. And this is the part he can't stop circling back to. She was looking at him, but also somehow not at him. Like her focus was set just past his shoulder, as if he was a window instead of a person. He told me, "Ava, something felt wrong immediately, like my stomach just dropped." The woman looked ordinary otherwise. Older, bundled up the way people are even when it's not that cold, holding one of those takeaway coffee cups. But then he got a proper look at her eyes. He said, "I couldn't see the white part, not even a bit. They were just dark, like ink. Maybe dark navy, but there was no pupil, no white, nothing." And he's not a dramatic man. He doesn't do that performative shiver thing. But he told me, completely serious, "The feeling I got off her was pure evil, just dread, like my body knew before my brain did." He tried to look away. He wanted to ignore it. But he said his eyes kept dragging back to her, like something was pulling his attention whether he liked it or not. And this is in daylight, out in the open. No weird shadows, no dim platform lighting, none of that. Then he notices the way she's drinking her coffee. Still staring in his direction, still pointing off and on. She lifts the cup, but instead of sipping normally, she presses it between her palms, flattening it, slowly squeezing it until it's barely a narrow slit, and then she drinks from that thin opening without taking her eyes off him. Not nervously, not like a fidget, deliberately, like she was showing him she could. And at that point, he's done. The train comes in and he gets on quickly, just relieved to put a door and a few meters between them. Except she gets on too. Not right next to him, but close enough that he spots her stepping into the next carriage over. So he does this very instinctive thing, gets off again, walks down the platform, and jumps into the furthest carriage away. He also wasn't the only one who noticed she was off. The weirdest part is how quickly it all happened. It was just a normal commute, and then, suddenly it wasn't. And when he told me, only minutes after it happened, he still looked pale. Not telling a creepy story pale, more like, I just touched a live wire pale. So yeah, that's it. That's what happened. And I know how it sounds. I do. But I also know my dad. Graham doesn't spook easily, and he doesn't invent things like that. And whatever that woman was, whether it was something paranormal or something else entirely, he came away from it feeling like he'd stared straight into something cold and wrong. And honestly, that's the part I can't shake. Okay. So I've carried this around in my head for a long time, and even now I can't fully explain it. It's one of those memories that sits there quietly, but every once in a while, it taps you on the shoulder like, "Hey, remember me?" I was about 7, maybe 8, little kid age, and my little brother, Milo, was about 4. We shared a bedroom. Same room, 2 beds, a TV we shouldn't have been up watching as late as we were. My older sister, Tessa, was around 12 and had her own room down the hall. One night, she was in her room digging through clothes, like fully in fashion show mode. She kept pulling out random stuff and putting together these loud, bright outfits. I mean, bright. Hot pink, sunshine yellow, this neon blue hoodie. Things that basically glowed in the dark compared to our dim little room. And she kept coming into our doorway to show us. It was like a routine. She'd walk in, stop right at the threshold, do a little spin or some goofy dance move, and Milo and I would. Then she'd dip out again, back to her room to find the next masterpiece. This happened a few times in a row, maybe 5 minutes total. Nothing scary, just annoying big sister energy. Then, the weird part. She comes in again, one more time, does the doorway pose, she leaves like normal. And then there's this, longer than the others. Milo and I go back to watching TV because we assume she's done. I remember the room feeling calm again, like the little show was over and it was just us and the screen. And then, out of nowhere, someone steps into the doorway. But it's not her. This figure was tall, like tall in a way that didn't make sense in our house. They were wearing all black, like a long coat and a hat, the kind with a brim. The silhouette looked straight out of an old movie, and it moved into the doorway and stopped, perfectly still, right where Tessa had been stopping. The thing is, my brain tried to make it normal instantly. I remember thinking, oh, it's Tessa wearing Dad's clothes. Because that's what kids do, right? You try to fit the world into the closest explanation you've got. But it didn't work. Tessa was short. Not tiny, but definitely not anywhere near this. This figure was so tall it had to sort of duck under the top of the doorframe. That part is burned into my mind, like the doorway suddenly looked too small for it. Milo giggled, which sounds crazy to say now, but he did. Like he thought it was just part of the game. He stared at it and made that little kid laugh, soft and automatic. And me? I didn't feel terrified. That's what people expect when I tell this, but it's not what I remember. I felt confused, like my brain was buffering, because I couldn't see a face. It was too dark, or the hat shadowed it or something. I just remember this blankness where the face should have been, and yet I had this intense feeling that it was staring directly at me. Not in a boo way, more like it knew I was watching it. It didn't speak, didn't move, just stood there for what felt like 10 seconds, long enough for the TV noise to feel far away and for my thoughts to get loud. Then it left. And that part is fuzzy. I can't clearly picture the walking away part the same way I can picture it standing there. I just remember that it was gone, and I was still looking at the doorway like my body didn't get the memo. I sat there for a second, trying to convince myself it had been my sister doing something stupid. But the height, the clothes, the stillness, none of it fit. So I finally got up and went down the hall to Tessa's room. And this is where it messed with me even more. There weren't any black clothes out. No coat, no hat, no dad clothes pile. Nothing. And when I asked her, something like, "What was that? Where did you get those clothes?" She turned around with this completely genuine, confused expression, like I just asked her why the ceiling was made of water. And she goes, "What are you talking about?" And she wasn't even acting. I know what it looks like when someone is trying not to laugh. This wasn't that. This was real confusion. Half her colorful clothes were already folded like she'd been doing it for a while. I remember standing there feeling stupid and unsettled at the same time, like I'd walked in on the wrong reality. Over the years, I've told a few people, usually late at night when conversations get quiet and honest, and the reactions are always the same. Someone says, "That's wild," and then the topic drifts away like it's too awkward to sit with. And I get it. I do. Even now, part of me tries to force it into something normal. Like maybe it was Tessa and my memory changed the height. Or maybe it was a weird shadow thing. Or maybe I just mashed two moments together in my head. But the thing is, when I remember it, it doesn't feel like a dream memory. It feels like a real one. Like a snapshot that shouldn't exist, but does. And I think that's why it still bothers me. Because I'm not even saying I know what it was. I'm just saying something stood in our doorway that night. And it wasn't my sister. So my mom used to tell me this story when I was a kid, and I swear, no matter how many times I heard it, it always gave me that same cold little shiver of, wait, what? She wasn't the type to believe in ghosts. Like, at all. Not the jumpy kind, not the spirits are everywhere kind. She was practical, busy, tired, and way more worried about charting and call lights than anything spooky. But she told me this was the one thing that actually cracked her skepticism. It was back in 2007 when she worked at a nursing facility that handled full-on geriatric care. Patients who needed real medical help, not just someone checking in on them. The building itself used to be the original hospital in their town years ago, and parts of it still had that old hospital vibe, especially the basement. Around lunchtime, she and another nurse, my mom called her Marisol, were doing their usual routine, bringing residents downstairs to the feeding room. These were residents who couldn't feed themselves, so the staff would bring them down, park them in their spots, and help them eat. My mom took the first resident down, an older man named Elliot, wheelchair-bound and blind. She rolls him into the feeding room, and the first thing she notices is 4 chairs pulled out around one of the tables. Like a little group had been sitting there talking. No one was supposed to be sitting there, not during this routine. But she doesn't think too hard about it, just assumes someone left them out earlier. So she pushes the chairs back in, stacks them neatly, and heads out to grab the next resident. On her way to the elevator, she passes Marisol coming down with the second resident. That mattered later, because it meant they were moving in this steady rhythm. One up, one down, always crossing paths. My mom brings the third resident down, another wheelchair-bound resident, also visually impaired, and when she rolls into the feeding room again, she stops short. The chairs are back out. Not just out either, pulled into the same spots around the same table, like someone had carefully reset the scene. She frowns, pushes them back in again, sets the resident into position, and tries to shrug it off. Maybe another staff member came in. Maybe someone was messing around. Maybe the chairs were just weirdly placed and she hadn't stacked them right. So she goes back up, brings down the next resident, passes Marisol again in the hallway, same timing, same pace. She wheels the resident into the feeding room, and the chairs are out again. Same table, same 4 chairs, same placement. Now she's getting that slow, prickly feeling up the back of her neck, the kind where you don't want to admit you're unsettled, but your body is already ahead of your brain. Still, she puts them back. Again. Neat. Firm. Like, there. Stay there. This time, though, she doesn't leave right away. She just stands there for a few seconds, staring at the table like it might explain itself. And because she hesitates, she breaks the pace. A minute later, Marisol wheels another resident into the room and immediately clocks my mom's face, because apparently my mom had that look people get when they're trying very hard to pretend they're fine. Marisol goes, kind of careful, kind of amused, "Are the chairs out again?" My mom just stares at her. "Yeah." And Marisol nods slowly and says something like, and that's when it really lands. Because by then, there are several residents in the room. People who can't stand up on their own. People who can barely lift a spoon without help. And somehow, between trips, 4 stacked chairs are being pulled out and positioned around the table like an invisible group meeting keeps happening. No dragging sounds, no laughter, no footsteps. Just chairs appearing exactly where they shouldn't be. Later, later, after my mom had asked around in that half-joking way people do when they're nervous, she finds out the staff already had a story. They said the basement had a regular, not a scary one, not a violent one, just a presence. They even had a name for him, Walter. And the way my mom described it, the wildest part wasn't even the ghost story. It was how casual everyone was about it. Like, oh yeah, that's just Walter. He hangs out down there. He's harmless. Apparently, that feeding room had been repurposed from something older in the hospital days, and there was an adjoining room that used to be part office, part morgue setup. By the time my mom worked there, that side room had been turned into storage, but it still had one of those heavy, stainless steel tables that you don't really forget once you've seen it. So yeah, that was the story. And my mom didn't come out of it calling herself a paranormal expert or anything. She'd roll her eyes if you even suggested that. But she told me, flat out, that after that day, she stopped saying ghosts weren't real because she couldn't make those chairs make sense any other way. And honestly, every time I think about 4 chairs quietly pulling themselves out in a basement full of people who physically couldn't do it, I get why. Hey, okay, so I need to tell you this the way it was told to me. Like, sitting at my grandmother's kitchen table, with the radio humming and her hands busy with something small, like she was trying to keep calm while saying things that still made her uncomfortable. This story takes place in northern Romania, not long after the late 70s rolled into the early 80s, back when villages felt sealed off from the rest of the world, and people believed in things they didn't say out loud unless they absolutely had to. So my grandma, her name was Elena, lived in this little house at the edge of the village, and just across a narrow lane, practically within whispering distance, lived her husband's sister, a woman named Marika. Now listen, Marika wasn't the kind of person you'd call eccentric and laugh it off. People in that area straight up called her a witch. Not in the cute storybook way either. People went to her for hexes, for revenge, for sickness, for fixing someone who drank too much or cheated too often. And she had a reputation that traveled. Farmers from villages 2 hills away would still show up at her gate like they were visiting a doctor. But the strange part wasn't just what she did. It was how she carried herself. Elena always said Marika had the coldest presence. Like being near her made you tighten up without knowing why. She wasn't friendly, she wasn't social, and she didn't hide her contempt. Especially not for Elena. Because Elena had children, 4 of them, and Marika couldn't stand that. She treated those kids like they were dirt on her shoes, and she'd spit insults at them whenever she got the chance. Elena told me that, at first, it was just the feeling of being watched. Like you'd be hanging laundry, and suddenly your shoulders would go stiff, and you'd turn and see Marika behind her fence, staring through you like you weren't even human. Then Elena started noticing things. Little things first. A dead frog where it shouldn't be. A strange bundle of twine tucked behind the stove. A knife stuck upright in the soil near the back step, like someone placed it there deliberately, blade down, handle up, as if the ground itself was holding it. And at night, this part always made my stomach flip. Elena said she'd sometimes wake up and see movement in Marika's yard. Not like a person walking normally, more like pacing, circling, back and forth, sometimes under the moonlight, sometimes with no light at all, like she didn't need to see. Elena swore she once saw Marika out there performing some kind of ritual, moving in slow circles, murmuring, her hair loose, her arms lifted like she was pulling something from the air. And here's where it gets worse. After a while, Elena started hearing noises inside her own house. Soft thumps in the walls, scratching in the chimney, a sound like someone tapping on glass when there was no glass to tap on. One night, Elena said the whole house shuddered. Not a little creak, not the normal settling of old wood. Shook, like the floor had breathed in and the walls flexed. She thought it was an earthquake. She ran outside, heart pounding, and went straight to the neighbors. Because in a village, you don't panic alone. But the neighbors looked at her like she'd lost her mind. They said nothing happened. Not a cup rattled. Not a chicken startled. The earth didn't move for anyone but her. And that's when Elena got frightened enough to bring the priest. So the priest came. Father Toma, she called him, and he prayed over the house for days, then weeks. Blessings, incense, holy water, scripture murmured so steadily it felt like part of the furniture. Elena said the air changed, little by little, like the house could finally unclench. Things quieted down. Not forever, but enough for her to breathe again. Now, I need you to understand something. Elena wasn't a cruel woman. She was strong, yes, but not vicious. She didn't go around cursing people. But one afternoon, after Marika had been particularly nasty, Marika pointed at Elena's children and called them dogs. Just like that. Dogs. And Elena snapped. Not because she wanted revenge, but because you can only swallow humiliation so many times before it turns into fire. Elena said she looked her right in the face and blurted out something she didn't even feel like she chose to say. She said, "Then may you not find peace until you have dogs of your own." She told me later she regretted it the instant it left her mouth. Years passed. Life moved on the way it does. Work, seasons, births, griefs. Marika grew older, and then she got sick. Very sick. The kind of sickness that makes a powerful person suddenly small. One winter morning, Elena noticed something that didn't sit right. Marika's door hadn't opened. There were no tracks in the snow. Not a single footprint, not even the messy kind that chickens leave. But Elena could still hear the radio playing inside Marika's house. That's what made her go over. She knocked. Nothing. She called her name. Still nothing. So Elena pushed the door open and stepped in. And what she found? She said she never fully recovered from. Marika was dead. Not peacefully dead. Not gently. Her eyes were wide open, staring upward like she'd seen something on the ceiling that terrified her too much to blink away. And in her mouth, this is the part that sounds impossible, but Elena insisted it was true. There was a packed snowball, like someone had shoved winter itself into her throat. Elena was frozen in place. She couldn't even scream at first, just stared, trying to make her brain accept what her eyes were seeing. Then she heard movement, a low sound, like soft squeaking, under the bed. And when Elena looked, there was a dog there. Not one of Elena's dogs, not any dog anyone remembered seeing go into that house. And the dog had just given birth. 4 tiny puppies pressed together in the dark. Elena said her blood went cold because the number hit her like a slap. 4. The same number as her children. And that's when Elena remembered the words she'd shouted years earlier, in rage. Words she'd forgotten until that exact second. The village doctor came and confirmed the death. Then the funeral preparations began. And in that region, the wake isn't held in a quiet building somewhere. It's held right there in the home, with people coming and going, candles burning, prayers murmuring, food laid out, grief mixing with routine. But Elena told me the wake didn't feel like mourning. It felt like waiting for something to happen. The animals in the yard were restless. A chained dog kept straining at its collar like it wanted to tear its own throat open just to get away. In the middle of the night, while Elena and a few neighbors sat talking in low voices, they heard a sharp crash from the room where Marika was laid out. Not a soft knock, a violent smash. They rushed in, thinking maybe an animal had gotten inside. But there was no animal. Only the incense jar, shattered in the middle of the floor, as if it had been flung there by a hand no one could see. Now here's where the old village beliefs come in. People there had a word for what they feared Marika might become. A strigoi, a malicious spirit, the kind that doesn't rest, the kind that lingers hungry and angry. Elena said the older women told her to cover mirrors, to keep prayers constant, to not leave doors open, to not speak the dead woman's name too loudly. The funeral day came. For a while, everything seemed normal. Elena stayed behind to prepare food, the way you do in those traditions, feeding people in memory of the dead. But then a man arrived at Elena's door, pale as flour, asking for a long needle, something sturdy. Elena asked him why, and he told her in a rush that on the way toward the church, Marika's face changed. The expression tightened, the mouth pulled into something like a frown. Her hands that were supposed to be still, looked clenched, tense, like she was gripping something. And that's where Elena's details stop, because she didn't go with them. She stayed with the food and the house and the fear. But even after Marika was buried, Elena said it didn't end. For nearly a year, Elena had dreams, sharp, vivid dreams where Marika appeared like she wasn't dead at all. In those dreams, Marika would threaten her. She'd say it didn't matter that her body was gone. She could still reach Elena, still harm her, still twist things in the dark. And years later, this is the part that makes the whole story feel like a knot you can't untie. One of Elena's grandchildren went searching in the old yard area with a metal detector, just for fun. And they found things. Odd things. A padlock bound with a rusted chain, wrapped in fabric, buried deep, like someone hid it there deliberately, not to keep it safe, but to keep it working. And other little objects tucked in places that felt intentional. When Elena saw them, her face changed immediately. She didn't want to touch them, didn't even want to look at them for long. She just said very quietly, "Get rid of those. Don't keep them near you." And that's how she always ended the story. Not triumphantly, not like she won, more like a warning. She told me, "People think evil is dramatic, but real evil is patient. It waits in cupboards, in dreams, in little objects buried where no one will find them." And then she'd go quiet, like she'd said too much. And honestly, even now, telling you this, I can't decide what scares me more. That it happened exactly the way she said, or that a whole village had rituals for it, like they'd seen it before. So, I want to tell you something that's been happening at my childhood home, and even now, talking about it, I get that weird mix of comfort and goosebumps. My dad passed away at home in early summer a couple years ago. It was quiet, it was heartbreaking, and ever since then this place has had these little moments that don't fit neatly into any explanation. Not horror movie scary, more like personal. Like someone's trying to be heard. My sister Mia still lives here full-time with her boyfriend Caleb. They've been here together for a while. I moved out not too long after everything happened, and I'm only about a mile away now, so I still come by a lot, sometimes to help, sometimes just because it still feels like home. And I should probably say this up front, I've always been the sensitive one. Ever since I was a kid, I'd pick up on things, sounds, feelings, little shifts in the air that other people shrug off. My current house is honestly the same way. I see and hear and feel things pretty often. But the difference is, I feel my dad too. And when I feel him, it's like my whole chest loosens. Like, okay, I'm not alone. Before I tell you what's happening now, you need the backstory, because that's the part that makes this feel so specific. When my dad was still alive but really unwell, we had what turned out to be his last Father's Day here with us. He couldn't go out, couldn't do much, and I remember standing in a store thinking, what do you even buy someone you might be saying goodbye to? I got him some soft lounge clothes, stuff he could actually use, but I wanted something that felt meaningful, something he could look at. So I found this simple frame that held 3 photos. I printed one of me and him from a day we were laughing so hard the picture came out a little blurry. One of him and Mia, she's got her head on his shoulder in it, and he's doing that proud dad half smile. And the third one was him with our dog, Buddy, sitting right at his feet like he belonged there. When I gave it to him, he just stared at it for a long time. And then his eyes filled up. My dad wasn't a big crier. He was more the type to make a joke and change the subject. But that day, he actually cried. And I cried too, trying to pretend I wasn't. He passed a few weeks later. After he was gone, we kept that frame up. It felt wrong to move it. I'd come into the room and see those photos, and it was like proof that he was real, that our life with him wasn't just something that ended and evaporated. Then, around the holidays, Mia and Caleb decided to tidy up to make space for decorations. And they brought a bunch of my dad's things up to the attic. Some ornaments, a couple keepsakes, and that photo frame. They meant well, I think, but they're also the kind of people who start a job and then abandon it halfway through. And when the holidays were over, nothing came back down. For months, I kept asking. Not even in a dramatic way, just, "Hey, can we please bring Dad's stuff down?" Especially the pictures. Especially the frame. I'd even offered to do it myself, but the attic hatch is up high, the ladder is awkward, and I'm short enough that the whole thing turns into a humiliating slapstick routine. Plus, Mia insisted she knew where everything was up there, and I didn't. So the photos stayed in the attic. Here's where it gets strange. Every time it happens, I get up and look, and sure enough, the attic hatch is just hanging open, slowly swinging like it was pushed. So I asked Mia if it's ever happened when it's just her and Caleb, and she goes, totally casual, "Nope, never." Which, okay, that's odd, right? Because it's not a quiet little click. It's a full-on bang against wood. You'd think it would wake anyone. The first time I heard it wasn't even me, actually. It was my mom. Mia and Caleb had gone away for a few days, and my mom stayed here to watch Buddy. She told me the next morning, "Something weird happened last night. The attic door slammed open. I thought maybe it was your dad trying to tell me something, but I didn't know what." And the second she said that, my mind went straight to the pictures. Instantly. No hesitation. It wasn't like I sat there connecting dots. It was just this immediate feeling of, it's the frame. It's his things. He wants them. Because that frame was meant for him. It was the last thing I gave him that wasn't practical, that wasn't medical or supportive or for the illness. It was for him, for his heart, for his life. And now it's sitting in a dusty attic. The wild part is, it still only seems to happen when I'm here. Not Mia, not Caleb, just me. And Caleb is tall, like annoyingly tall, so he's the only one who can get up there easily. Which means the only person who can fix it is also the same person who keeps saying, "Yeah, I'll do it," and then doesn't. I know how this sounds. I do. Maybe it's the house settling. Maybe it's a draft. Maybe the latch is loose. But then I think about the timing. Because the last time it happened, I'd gone to bed really emotional. Earlier that night, I'd been reading this thread online. People arguing about how there's no life after death, how it's all wishful thinking, how you live and then you're gone. And it hit me like a punch. I started imagining my dad, this warm, hilarious, kind man, just extinguished, like a light turned off forever. And it broke me. I cried myself to sleep in my old room like I was 15 again. And then, in the middle of the night, bang! The attic door. The same exact sound. The same exact moment. Like a message landing right on the edge of my sleep. And I just lay there, staring into the dark, feeling my whole body go still. And I remember thinking, okay, I hear you. Maybe it was him saying, "Bring my pictures home." Maybe it was him saying, Stop reading stuff that hurts you. Maybe it was just him reminding me, gently, stubbornly, that love doesn't disappear just because a body does. I don't know. I can't prove anything. I'm not trying to convince anyone. I just know it doesn't feel scary. It feels like him. Like that quiet insistence he had when he wanted something done. Like a nudge in the ribs from the other side of the room. And honestly, even if all it ever does is make me finally get that frame down from the attic and put it somewhere it belongs, I kind of love the idea that he's still finding ways to take up space in our lives. Because if there's one thing my dad was good at, he never liked being ignored. So, this happened when I was a junior at Mississippi State University. It was one of those spring Saturdays in the deep south where the air feels almost unreal. Warm without being heavy. Bright without being harsh. I've had beautiful autumn days up north, and those calm, perfect Midwest summer evenings. But southern springtime? On the best days, it's like the whole world turns the saturation up. Every color pops. Every smell is a little sweeter. Even the sounds, birds, wind through leaves, feel sharper, like you're standing inside a movie. That day was one of those days. I drove about 25 miles off campus to pick up the girl I was dating. Her name was Clara, from her parents' place. We were headed to an all-day river party on the Tombigbee River at somebody's house a few miles out. Clara had a couple bags with her, and as we were getting ready to go, she asked if we could swing by and drop something off to her friend. Her friend, Hannah, was working as a hostess for one of those small-town spring pilgrimages. If you've never been to one, a pilgrimage is basically when towns, especially in Mississippi, open up their old pre-Civil War homes for tours. People come through, and local students help guide visitors room to room while the homeowners talk history. It's kind of a big deal in those places. The hosts and hostesses dress up too. Old formal outfits, sometimes those big, elaborate gowns. Anyway, Clara directed me to the house where Hannah was stationed. It was a big white place, 3 stories, with a porch that looked like it belonged on a postcard. I remember the fence out front, neat and pale, and the way the sunlight hit the paint like it was glowing. It was around 10:30 in the morning, maybe a little after. We parked right out front. Clara hopped out with her bags, and as we walked up, the front door was already open, like it was inviting you in. The second we got close, we heard laughter and voices coming from somewhere in the back of the house. Clara smiled and said, "Oh, I hear Hannah back there. I'm gonna run around and say hi." And I said, "Yeah, okay, I'll be right behind you." She went off toward the back, and I stepped just inside the front door because, I don't know, I wanted to take it in for a second. The house felt old, in that clean, polished way, like it had been cared for forever. There was a long central hallway straight ahead to a back door, and doors opening off both sides. On the left, maybe 10 feet in, a staircase rose up to a landing on the second floor. And that's when it started. At first it was just my neck. You know that feeling where the hair on the back of your neck lifts, like your body reacts before your brain catches up? That happened. But it wasn't mild. It was like every single hair back there stood straight up at once. I paused, confused. I remember thinking, why am I doing that? Like I even tried to laugh it off internally. I'm standing in a bright, cheerful house on a perfect morning. People are laughing in the next room. There's no reason for my body to be acting like a deer that just heard a twig snap. Then I noticed the hair on my arms rising too. Not just a little. Rigid. Like static electricity had grabbed me. I told myself to stop being weird about it. I started to take a step toward the back of the house, and my feet didn't move. At first I thought my shoes had caught on something, like maybe the rug was snagging. But no, it was my body. I was stuck, completely still. And then, like somebody slowly turned off my ability to control myself, my neck muscles gave out. My head dipped forward, inch by inch, until my chin was almost pressed against my chest. I tried to speak. I tried to call Clara's name. Nothing came out. And then this other feeling arrived. Not fear like something startled me. This was fear like something is wrong and it's right here. And layered on top of that fear was something I don't have a better word for than a message, like a thought that wasn't mine. It was hate, not irritation, not anger. Hate, focused, sharp, and aimed at me like a spotlight. And somehow, in my mind, I saw that there was something up on the landing at the top of the stairs. I couldn't physically lift my head enough to look, but I knew it was there. Like my awareness got tugged in that direction. Then I had this sudden, crystal clear instinct. You have to face it. With everything I had, I forced my head up. It was jerky, like trying to lift a weight with a muscle that's cramped. But I got my eyes up high enough to see the landing. And what I saw, it wasn't a person. Not really. It was like a human-sized column of dark, muddy smoke, brownish, almost like fog mixed with dirt, slowly turning in place. Inside it were darker streaks, little black specks, like ash swirling through it. It didn't have a face, but it felt like it was looking at me. The moment I saw it clearly, that hateful pressure intensified, like it realized I could see it. And then it moved. It didn't walk. It swooped. It came down the stairs fast, straight toward me, and before I could even process what was happening, it passed through me and went out the front door behind me. When it went through my body, it felt like being electrocuted, not with pain exactly, but with this violent, burning surge of, I don't even know, disgust and hostility. Like my whole nervous system lit up with someone else's rage. And the message came with it, loud and unmistakable. Get out. The second it passed, I got a little control back, enough to move. I could see the back door at the end of the hallway straight ahead. The front door was open behind me, but I didn't trust myself to turn around without collapsing, so I just shuffled forward. Weak, wobbly, like my legs belonged to somebody else. I made it to the back door, pushed it open, and stepped outside. There was this tidy backyard garden, formal, almost like a small estate. And about 20 feet from the house, there was a stone bench. I staggered over and sat down hard like I'd just run miles. The whole thing, from stepping inside the front door to sitting on that bench, couldn't have been more than 2 minutes. I sat there trying to breathe normally, trying to tell myself I'd just had some kind of, I don't know, a weird spell, a panic attack, anything. But then, after maybe 30 seconds, the hair on my neck started rising again. Then my arms. And even though I was facing away from the house, I got this snapshot in my mind, like a sudden mental photograph of the back of the house. There was a single window high up near the roof peak, and in that snapshot, that swirling column was there, watching me through the glass. And again the message hit me. Get out. Not out of the house, out of there, off the property. That same instinct rose up again, the one that told me I had to confront it. So I turned around, stiff and twitchy, and forced myself to look up at that window. And I swear, I could see it faintly through the old glass, like a dark smudge of movement. The moment I really looked straight at it, it vanished. I didn't start the engine right away. I just sat there, hands on the steering wheel, trying to understand what I'd just lived through. A few minutes later, Clara came out, cheerful at first, then immediately worried when she saw my face. "What happened?" she asked. "Why didn't you come back? Are you okay? Why are you just sitting here?" And I couldn't do it. I couldn't tell her. Not then. So I lied. I told her I suddenly felt sick, nauseous, and I'd come to sit in the car until it passed. She got that concerned, caring look and immediately wanted to help. And I felt awful because she didn't deserve a lie. But I genuinely didn't have the words. I didn't even have a place to put the experience in my mind yet. We sat quietly for a little bit. Eventually, I told her I felt better and we should head to the river party. We went. But I'll tell you, I wasn't exactly fun company that day. And here's the part that still gets me. It was years before I could tell this story out loud to anyone. I kept it locked away because every time I tried to think about it, I'd feel that same cold pressure in my chest. I still don't know what that thing was. I don't know why it hated me. I don't know why it wanted me gone so badly. All I know is, it did. So, yesterday I took a walk through this local cemetery I've been researching for work. And I know, most people hear cemetery and immediately get this heavy feeling. But for me, it's never been just a place for the dead. It feels like a little pocket of stillness tucked right into the middle of a loud, rushing world. Like a quiet public garden where nobody asks anything of you. And the second I stepped through the entrance, I felt it. That weird, rare kind of happiness that hits so hard it almost knocks the breath out of you. You know that feeling? Like you're exactly where you're supposed to be, and for a moment you don't want anything else. That's what came over me. Not spooky, not sad, warm, almost loved. I started down one of the winding paths, letting my mind drift, and that's when I noticed it. A headstone that practically glowed compared to the others. Not shiny, exactly, just brighter, like it was catching more light than it had any right to. And carved into it was a last name I recognized immediately. It was the same last name as a former client from my old healthcare admin days, back when I worked with medical equipment and coordinated home setups. I hadn't thought about her in a long time, not properly. The stone didn't have first names or dates that I could see, which made it even stranger, like it was unfinished, or waiting. I stood there longer than I meant to, long enough to feel ridiculous about it. I remember whispering to myself, okay, coincidence, like that would settle it. Then I kept walking, trying to shake it off. But last night, when I finally got into bed, my brain wouldn't let the place go. The cemetery kept replaying like a song stuck in my head. Those paths, that bright stone, the way my chest had tightened for no reason I could explain. So today, I'm at my desk, doing deeper historical research, digging into family records tied to the cemetery's early caretakers, and suddenly a name pops up that makes my stomach flip. Not the exact same as my old client, but close enough that I froze. The record listed a woman with that same last name as the great-granddaughter of one of the founders back in the 1800s. The caretaker line. The "this land stayed in the family" kind of history. I literally said out loud, "No way." Then I did what any emotionally unwell researcher does when the universe starts acting up. I went down the rabbit hole. Obituaries, burial registries, old local archives, those sketchy grave databases that look like they were made in 2004 and never updated. And there she was. Same last name, same county, buried in that very cemetery. I swear my throat closed up so fast I couldn't even swallow. I sat at my desk trying not to cry like a middle schooler who just got hit with a memory they weren't ready for. Because here's the thing, this woman, this client from years ago, She wasn't just a name in a file to me. In my head, she was still this soft, sweet presence, the kind of person who made you feel safe just by existing. She used to call me my little honey and pat my hand when she talked, like she was blessing you without even meaning to. She reminded me so much of my own Nana. Same gentle way, same warmth in her eyes. And I had no idea she was from the same area I'm from. None. I didn't even know she had ties here. So seeing it, right there in black and white, felt unreal. Like the world had quietly stitched something together behind my back. And it hit me all at once how much I miss her. How much I miss that version of my life, too. I didn't realize how much I'd been carrying until that moment. The universe is, I don't know, mysterious, annoying, beautiful, all of it at once. But I kept thinking of all the places my feet could have taken me yesterday. I ended up there, at the exact stone with a name that still lives in my heart. And honestly, that day has stayed with me ever since. In the best way. But wait, because it gets even wilder. That night, after I'd cried and calmed down and told myself to stop spiraling, I had a dream. In the dream, I was back in the cemetery, and everything felt crystal clear, like I was fully awake. And I kept seeing this different headstone. Not the one I'd noticed before. This one was a vivid coral red color, almost like sun-baked clay. And the last name was right there on it, bold as anything. I woke up with that image still burned into my mind. So the next day, because apparently I have zero chill, I went back. I took the same entrance, walked the same path, and found the original bright stone again. And this time, I realized what had happened. The grass had grown up so high around it that the first names were basically hidden. It wasn't her. I just missed the details. For a second, I felt silly. Like, okay, that's it, mystery solved. But I was already there, so I kept walking. I wandered with this quiet hope in my chest, like I was being pulled around by something I couldn't see. And under my breath, without really deciding to, I said, "Where are you, Marlene?" Not her real name, just what I started calling her in my head because it felt right. Because she always sounded like someone's favorite aunt. Because I needed a name to say out loud. I checked one corner. Nothing. Then another. Nothing. And finally, I reached the last little stretch of the cemetery I hadn't explored yet, tucked behind a line of old trees. It felt forgotten back there, like even the wind got quieter. And then I saw it. The coral red headstone from my dream. Same color, same last name. Exactly where my feet had carried me like I'd been guided. I just stood there with my hand over my mouth. I didn't even cry right away. I couldn't. I was too stunned. It was like my whole body went still so my brain could catch up. And now, I go back sometimes. Not constantly, but when I feel that familiar heaviness creeping in, or when life gets too loud. I'll bring a little sandwich, a coffee, and I'll sit nearby like I'm having lunch with an old friend. And I'll talk to her, not in some dramatic way, just little updates, gratitude, a quiet hello. Because life and death are honestly too wild for me to understand. But I do know this. I'm unbelievably lucky to notice these moments when they brush past me. These strange, tender circles closing. These reminders that love doesn't disappear just because time moves on. And I'll never forget the day a cemetery didn't feel like loss at all. It felt like being found. So, I'm 33 now, and I've had these weird flashes and knowing moments for as long as I can remember. Premonitions, heavy energy, the sense that something is there even when the room looks totally normal. It's always been random, and honestly, I've never fully explored it the way people tell me I should. I kind of live around it. But this happened a couple nights ago, and it shook me in a way I can't easily shrug off. That night, I was burning up, like uncomfortable, can't get cool hot. So I did something I basically never do. I slept with only a thin sheet. Usually I sleep bundled up, especially around my neck. Ever since I was little, I've done that. Like, I need that pressure there to feel safe. I've always joked it feels like some leftover past life fear, like my body remembers something my brain doesn't. Dramatic, I know, but it's been a lifelong thing. And then I fell asleep on my back. Another thing I almost never do. The dream starts with me in this tiny downstairs unit, like a cramped basement apartment, underneath some other home I didn't recognize. In the dream, I'm with someone, a friend-feeling person named Mara, and there's this sudden realization that the place above us isn't locked. Like the door is unsecured and we're exposed. That uh-oh feeling hits. Like you don't even know what is coming, you just know it's coming. The next part gets fuzzy, like my mind skips frames. But I remember grabbing Mara and we end up hiding in a closet. And the closet looks exactly like my real one. Same shape, same shelf, same weird cramped corner. That's when the dream goes pitch black. And the blackness is terrifying, because I've got partial vision loss in my left eye. So darkness isn't just spooky to me, it's personal. It's disorienting in a way that's hard to explain if you haven't lived with it. Then, suddenly, I'm on my back again, and I can't tell if I'm still dreaming or if I'm half awake. You know that awful in-between place where your body feels real, the room feels real, but the logic of the world doesn't? I feel this presence rush toward me. I can't see it. I don't see a shape. I don't see a face. Nothing. But the energy is thick, hostile, and fast, like something swooping in. And my instinct, because I'm stubborn and I hate feeling powerless, is to challenge it. In my head, I'm like, fine, show yourself. So I actually say out loud, well, I think out loud, all right then, come on. And the second I do, it hits me. Not like a gentle weight, not like a dream where you feel pinned. This was like something with real mass slamming down onto my body. I felt it on my legs first, heavy, like someone dropping onto the bed. Then it moved up, stomach, chest, and then the worst part, my neck. Like it was pressing down harder and harder, claiming space. And then I heard it. This sound. I don't even like typing it because it makes my skin prickle. It was a deep, guttural growl, lower than any human voice, not quite animal either. It had this awful intelligence to it, like it wasn't just noise. It felt aimed at me. It lasted seconds, but it was the scariest sound I've ever heard in my life. Worse than any horror movie, worse than any creepy thing I've ever experienced. Because horror movies don't feel like they're in your room. I snapped and screamed, "Get off me!" And instantly, like someone flipped a switch, my eyes flew open. Fully awake, heart punching my ribs. Staring into my real bedroom, frozen stiff, still hearing that growl echoing in my head like a stain I couldn't scrub out. Then I shook my partner awake. His name is Evan. And I didn't even try to play it cool. I just needed him to hold me. I needed a living, warm, real person next to me to anchor me back into normal reality. And our cat, Juniper, hopped up like she sensed something was off, and curled right in, too, like this little furry bodyguard. That helped. A lot. Here's the thing. I've never had sleep paralysis before. Ever. I've read about it, obviously. Who hasn't? But it's never happened to me. And I've always wondered if it's because I don't sleep on my back. So the next day I went down the rabbit hole. Hypnagogic hallucinations, hypnopompic hallucinations, auditory phenomena between sleep and waking. All the clinical explanations. And none of them matched the way I wanted them to. Not cleanly. Not comfortably. The closest thing people describe is this low vibrating hum, this growly presence, this entity feeling. But what I experienced felt so targeted, so heavy, so personal. I should also mention something else because it's part of my brain's landscape. I have this obsessive counting thing. Not like quirky, I like even numbers. I mean counting everything, automatically, like my nervous system does it for me. It spikes when I'm stressed. It's tied to trauma, not spirituality. I avoid certain number patterns and repeat check things in my head like it keeps me safe. It's exhausting, but it's my reality. Anyway, fast forward to the next night. It's late, I'm finally in bed, and I'm fully awake, like scrolling on my phone awake. Evan gets up and walks out into the hallway to take a shower. The moment he turns the corner and disappears from view, I hear it. Right behind me. Not in my head, not like a maybe, clear as day. Psst. Like someone trying to get my attention. Like they're standing a few feet away from the bed. My whole body went cold. I shot upright and said, out loud and firm, "No, you're not welcome here. Leave me alone." And then, like a puzzle piece snapping into place, I remembered something. A few days earlier, we'd gone to this little pop-up vintage market thing with our kid, Micah. One of those tent setups with tables of antiques and old knickknacks. We bought a handful of stuff. An old film camera, a couple small toys, some glass bottles, random odds and ends. Cute little treasures. We love that kind of thing. But the timing hit me like a punch. Everything strange started right around when those items came into the house. So I didn't hesitate. I gathered every single thing we bought that day, put it all into a box, and set it out for trash pickup. No, maybe I'll cleanse it later. No, let's keep the camera. Just gone. Then I found a half-forgotten bundle of sage in a drawer and smudged every corner of the house. Closets, doorways, behind the couch, the whole thing. And while I did it, I said what I had in my heart. Simple, direct. Only peace in this home. Anything harmful has to leave. This house is not for you. And yeah, I also tacked on a prayer I remembered from childhood. My family was Catholic, even though I don't really practice now. It wasn't about religion so much as it was about claiming my space in the most familiar language I had. Since then, nothing. No growls, no whispers, no heavy feeling. The house feels normal again, like the air is mine. So I can't stop wondering if it was tied to those secondhand items. I know that sounds dramatic, and part of me wants to roll my eyes at myself. But the timing, the escalation, and then the sudden quiet after I got rid of them. It's hard to ignore, and I keep thinking about that second night, the psst, because that wasn't sleep. That was me awake, phone in hand, lights from the screen on my face. Hello, Paranormal M friends. It's me again. I honestly, truly love what I do. Sitting down with the mic and sharing mysterious stories from all over the world to help you drift off to sleep. It's such a great feeling. I hope you'll keep supporting the channel and sending in even more of your strange, mysterious experiences. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss our latest videos. Now, without further ado, let's jump into today's stories. Hey, so I know a lot of people roll their eyes at paranormal stories, and honestly, I used to be one of those people. But I'm telling you this straight, the way it happened, because I don't have anything to gain from it. If anything, I wish I didn't have a story like this. Back then, I was a student in a little town called Zunhara. Pretty rural, the kind of place where empty lots and abandoned buildings feel normal. Like, there was this old Soviet-era medical facility on the edge of the walk back to the dorms. Not the kind of building you want to stare at too long, you know? I lived in a dorm with a few friends, and there was always this rumor floating around. There's a ghost here. There's a spirit here. The usual dorm nonsense. And I truly thought it was just students feeding each other scary stories because they were bored. I was on the student council, so we worked closely with academic affairs. And I swear to you, we had meetings where the topic, actually written down, was basically how to handle the paranormal rumors. I remember sitting there thinking, is this a joke? Are we seriously doing this? But the staff, especially a couple of visiting European instructors and some Mongolian faculty, were weirdly firm about it. Their whole thing was, don't escalate it, don't spread it, shut the rumors down calmly. One instructor even said, very casually, that he'd witnessed something himself. I laughed it off at the time. I was one of those hardcore, science-only people, like aggressively skeptical. The kind of person who would argue with you just for using the word energy in a spiritual way. Anyway, one night, around 2 a.m., one of our friends, let's call him Erden, just collapsed. No warning. He was standing, then he wasn't. We panicked, called an ambulance, and for a few minutes it was chaos. Shouting, trying to keep him awake, trying to explain what happened when we didn't even understand it ourselves. 3 of us went with him at first. Me, my friend Sarul, and another friend, that Saikon. The medics took Erden in, checked him, and after a while it seemed like he was stable. That Saikon headed back early to the dorms, and me and Sarul stayed a bit longer, and then started walking back once things calmed down. And listen, at that hour, in towns like that, it's not like a city where there are lights and traffic. It's mostly open space, wide, quiet fields, a few scattered buildings, the kind of dark that feels thick. We were walking back, maybe a couple meters apart, joking in that nervous way people do after something scary, making dumb little comments about how Erden just rage quit life for a second, stuff like that, trying to keep it light. Then, as we got closer to that abandoned Soviet building on the route, it got cold. Not like, oh, it's Mongolia, it's chilly. I mean sudden, sharp, unnatural cold, like the air changed texture. I remember my skin tightening instantly, and my brain doing that thing where it tries to rationalize fast because it doesn't want to feel fear. And that's when we heard it. A woman's whisper. Not behind us exactly, not in front. More like it was around us. Like it didn't belong to any single direction. And it wasn't wind. It wasn't leaves. There weren't even trees close enough for that kind of sound. It was a whisper with shape to it. Like someone was speaking close to your ear, except no one was there. We both slowed down without even saying anything. I remember staring at the field, at the rocks, at the empty stretch of ground, trying to find a person, a shadow, anything. Nothing, the whispering continued. Sarul looked at me and his face, his expression, changed into this tight, stiff look, like he was trying not to panic. He said, really quietly, "Do you hear that?" And I said yes, because I did. I couldn't understand most of it. It was like half-formed words, or a language you recognize but can't fully catch because your heart is pounding too loud in your ears. But the last part? The last part was clear. It said, "In Hoyerstjahwe," which, yeah, translates to, "What should we do with these two?" And I know how that sounds. I know. If someone told me this story back then, I would have smirked and said they were sleep-deprived, hyped up, trying to scare themselves. But I heard it, and Sarul heard it, at the same moment. We didn't scream. We didn't run like a movie. We just moved faster. Instinct took over. We sped up, not looking back too much because neither of us wanted to see something we couldn't unsee. We got to the dorm and shut the door like it could lock the whole night out. Inside, we talked, quietly, intensely, comparing what we heard. Same voice, same feeling, same words at the end. And here's the part that messed with me even more. Remember Batsai Khan, the one who left early? He told us later he heard something too on his walk back. He just tried to ignore it, telling himself he was imagining things. But when we told him what happened to us, he went pale because it lined up in the worst possible way. After that, the three of us made this agreement. We don't talk about it in the dorm. Not loudly, not casually, not like a campfire story. Because in our heads, it felt like attention might invite it. Sarul had this personal reason for believing that too. His grandmother was the type of traditional spiritual practitioner who always taught, don't acknowledge certain things, don't engage, don't feed them. Basically, ignore it, and it won't stick to you. I ended up transferring a few months later for a scholarship opportunity, so I didn't stay in that place long. But that night didn't leave me. And even now, years later, I can still feel that cold snap in my bones when I remember it. That moment where my whole worldview cracked a little. Not because I wanted to believe, but because I couldn't explain what happened without lying to myself. And yeah, if you're curious, I still have old chat messages from that night. Me and the others trying to make sense of it in real time while we were still shaking. So that's it. That's what happened. And I'm happy to answer questions, seriously, because I know how unbelievable it sounds until it happens to you. Hey, thanks for letting me tell you this. I'm going to start a little ways back, because none of what happened recently makes sense without the rest of it. I'm a bloke in my mid-40s. My wife, Emma, and I have been together forever, honestly. We got together young, and we've built a proper life. A home that we've slowly made into ours. 2 daughters, one in her early 20s, and one just finishing her teens, and the younger one still lives with us. But before our girls were born, there was another baby. Emma got pregnant almost immediately after we got together, like shockingly fast. People can judge if they want, but we were kids in love trying to do our best. The pregnancy didn't go how it should have. Our little girl, Lila, came far too early. She lived for the briefest moment, and then she was gone. What still gets me is that right up until the end, Emma could feel her moving, like she was saying, "I'm here," until she suddenly wasn't. I don't think anything has ever hit me like that did. It was the kind of grief that changes the shape of your life. And somehow, it could have shattered us, but it didn't. It welded us together. We stayed. We carried it. We went on to have our 2 daughters, and we got married, and we did the normal things people do. Work, bills, birthdays, arguing about paint colors, while always having this quiet, tender, missing piece in the background. Then, years later, my body changed the rules on me. About 7 years ago, I developed a mobility condition. It isn't degenerative on paper, but in real life it's become harder and harder. I used to be on my feet all day for work, selling, driving, talking, grafting, since I was a teenager. Losing that version of myself, I don't know how else to say it. It broke something in me. I sank into a depression I didn't recognize. And then came the worst part. The voices. That's the bit people never understand unless they've lived it. The mental health services, the appointments, the fear of, here we go again. The constant question in the back of your head, is this real? Or is it me? Over time, my mobility got worse. Pride is a funny thing, how it can make you suffer more than you need to. I fought adaptations like they were insults. A stair lift, a wheelchair for longer outings. All of it felt like admitting defeat, even when it was just being practical. And then, last autumn, everything shifted again. It was around late October 2024 when my sleep really started falling apart. Pain, tossing, waking up constantly. Emma sleeps with earplugs because I use a CPAP machine, so at night it's mostly just me, awake in the dark, listening to the house. That's when I started hearing things. At first it was small, little noises from downstairs. The letterbox rattling like someone had pushed it. A chair scrape. A door click. The kind of stuff you can explain away as a house settling. And because no one else heard it, I told myself that's what it was. Even the dog didn't react, so I forced myself not to spiral. But it didn't stop. As winter rolled in, the sounds got louder and more deliberate. Not just a random creak, more like movement, like someone walking, slow, steady footsteps. Still only at night, still only when I was awake. After Christmas, it started feeling closer. It wasn't just downstairs anymore. I'd hear what sounded like footsteps on the stairs, the blinds on the landing tapping gently like they'd been nudged, a basket lid shifting, that sort of thing. Room to room, like a presence tracing the layout of our home. And I need you to understand this part. My first thought wasn't ghost. My first thought was, oh no, I'm relapsing. Because that would be the logical explanation, wouldn't it? Then came the morning that shook me. It was midweek in February 2025, Wednesday. I woke up just before 6, properly awake, not half dreaming, and I heard a bedroom door drag open upstairs. You know the sound. Carpet resisting, the door sort of catching. It was my youngest daughter's room. Right after that, I heard a soft voice, clear as anything, say, "Dad." Not shouting, not spooky, just gentle, like someone trying not to wake the whole house. My heart did that drop it does. I thought, she's ill again. She'd had a stomach bug a day or two earlier, so I swung my legs out, pulled on my dressing gown because the house was freezing, and I went onto the landing. And her door was closed, and the landing was empty. That cold went right through me, not the temperature kind, the wrongness of it. I stood there staring, trying to make my brain find the explanation. And then it hit me. She hadn't even been home. She'd stayed at her boyfriend's that night. So who opened the door? Who said, "Dad"? I went downstairs and I just sat there with my thoughts racing. I didn't call anyone. I didn't tell Emma. I didn't tell my daughters. I didn't tell my parents. Because once you've been in psychiatric care, you learn how quickly people look at you differently. I didn't want anyone watching me for signs, or insisting I ring the doctor, or treating me like I wasn't a reliable narrator of my own life. But I was scared. And also, this sounds mad, I was oddly calm, because a part of me thought, if this is real, at least I'm not losing my mind. The next day was the one that changed everything. Thursday afternoon, Emma went out with her mom. The house was quiet, just me and the dog. I was in the kitchen making myself something to eat, half leaning on the counter like I always do now, when there was a knock at the front door. It was my mom, Jan, coming to pick up some ironing. She lives ridiculously close, just across the road with my dad, and since I've struggled more, she likes to help. She came in, we chatted like normal, nothing dramatic. Nothing said. She left. And about 2 minutes later, I got a text. "What's going on? Who's upstairs? And why did you look so flustered when you opened the door?" I remember just staring at it like I couldn't translate the words. I texted back, confused, and told her, "Mom, it's just me here. I was in the kitchen. I wasn't flustered." Then she replied with what she'd seen. She said as she was walking up to the house, she glanced at the upstairs window, the room we use as a little TV room, and she saw a young woman standing there. Slender, shoulder-length brown hair, solid as anyone. She said she looked early 20s, like she could have been one of my daughter's friends. Mom even waved at her because it looked so normal. And then she got to the door, and it was just me. No one else in the house. I can't even describe the feeling of reading that message, because it was like the floor shifted. All those nights of sounds I'd tried to swallow, and suddenly someone else had witnessed something. Someone who didn't know any of it. Someone who wouldn't have imagined it. That's when I told her the truth, carefully. That for months I'd been hearing footsteps, doors, noises moving closer. That I'd heard someone say, "Dad." That I was terrified it meant I was getting unwell again, but now I didn't know what it meant at all. My mom is a big believer in the afterlife. Always has been. She immediately went there. Spirits, signs, loved ones. And she said something that made me go very still. She said, "What if it's your baby? What if she's come back to watch over you? Like our little girl?" But now I was stuck in this emotional tug-of-war. Because if it is her, if somehow, in some way, it's our lost daughter, then that's heartbreaking and beautiful and terrifying all at once. And then my brain starts asking questions I never wanted to ask. Would she look older? Would she have grown up in whatever after is? Or is that just my grief trying to shape a story out of random events? And if it isn't her, then who is it? Is it something harmless? Is it something that doesn't even know it's scaring us? Or is it just my mind playing tricks in the worst possible way? The cruelest part is this. I don't have recordings. No video, no audio, nothing neat and tidy. Just months of noises, one clear voice saying "Dad," and one very real witness who saw a young woman in our window. And I finally told Emma, because I had to. I couldn't keep it to myself once my mom had seen what she saw. And Emma is terrified, properly frightened. She wants to move, like immediately. And I'm trying to calm her down when I don't even know what I'm dealing with. So that's where I am, not asking to be convinced, not trying to make anyone believe me, just sitting in the middle of grief, illness, pride, fear, and this strange thread of hope I didn't ask for, wondering what the next step is supposed to be when something in your own home doesn't feel explainable anymore. Hey, so I want to tell you about a place I owned for a long time. And I know how this is going to sound, so just bear with me. About 11 years ago, I bought this old general store building to turn into a small manufacturing shop. Nothing fancy, just a big, plain box of a structure, maybe 7,500 square feet. No creepy hallways, no maze of offices, no basement that screams, "Don't go down there." It was built in the early 80s on land that used to be part of a homestead, with this massive red barn nearby. One of those turn-of-the-century ones that looks like it has stories baked into the wood. Except the barn didn't last. Sometime in the early 2000s, somebody torched it. Arson. The whole thing went up, and all that was left was ash, warped nails, and twisted metal like bones. And here's the thing. There were two other details that always sat in the back of my mind. One was that there were federal research facilities not too far up the road, maybe 25 miles or so. The other was the older history. Indigenous presence on that land way back, long before any homestead or barn ever existed. I'm not trying to make it dramatic. I'm just saying, the place had layers. Within the first few weeks of moving in, I started to feel like something was off. Not like I saw a floating woman in a white dress or anything like that. It was subtler. It started with the machinery. I had the most absurd, relentless luck with equipment. And when I say luck, I mean the kind of luck where it stops feeling random and starts feeling personal. Brand new machines would fail. Well-maintained machines would suddenly go weird. Not just one type either. Everything. It didn't matter if it was a CNC, a drum sander, an industrial embroidery machine, a plotter. Something was always happening, and it always happened at the worst possible times. Holiday rushes, deadline weeks, right when a big order was due. Like the building had a calendar and a sense of humor. We'd come in and find the commercial fridge switched off. Not tripped, not a breaker issue. Someone had physically flipped the switch. Bolts would be loosened like someone had taken a wrench to them. Drive belts would be half sliced. Plotter heads would mysteriously gum up overnight like they'd been left to stew in glue. The soldering iron would be turned on when nobody was there. Thermostats would be set down into the low 50s for no reason. Little adjustments would show up on equipment, just enough to ruin material or wreck alignment, like someone knew exactly how to cause maximum annoyance without making it obvious. And for years, I tried to explain it away. I did the responsible thing. I had professionals test the building for everything you'd test for if you were trying to keep your head on straight. Electrical surges, grounding issues, humidity problems, static, bad wiring, weird signals, rodents, carbon monoxide, you name it. I changed the locks. I got strict about keys. We were a small shop, never more than 10 or 11 employees, mostly closer to 5 or 6 on a normal day. And honestly, some of the staff wouldn't have known how to mess with half this equipment even if they wanted to. But it wasn't just the machines. Over the years, we had these moments, little ones at first, that didn't fit neatly into any explanation. People would hear voices up in the storage lofts. Not loud, not clear enough to make out words. Just distant, like someone talking in another room. Sometimes you'd catch movement in the reflection of a black computer monitor, even though nothing was behind you that should have moved. There were cold spots too, and breezes, which sounds basic until you understand the building had no openable windows, just a few exterior doors and the big garage door. I actually had roofers check the fascia because it got cold enough that I was convinced something had to be open, like a gap, a broken vent, birds getting in, wasp nests, something. But everything checked out. And then there were the crashes. Tools would fall. Materials would drop. Something would slam like a shelf had collapsed, and you'd run over. And nothing had moved. Nothing was broken. Nobody was anywhere near it. For almost a year, I was convinced a cat had gotten in somehow. I paid an exterminator to check the entire perimeter like I was trying to secure Fort Knox. What's interesting is, it wasn't everyone who reacted the same way. Some people shrugged it off. Some people joked. But there were a handful of us, especially 5 women, including me, who all felt the same thing when we were there alone after hours. It wasn't terror. It was more like the air felt occupied. Like when you walk into a room and you can tell someone was just there, even if you don't see them. A couple of the younger employees, Tessa and Brooke, started burning sage and incense on late nights. Not performatively, not for Instagram, just quietly. Like, I don't care if this is silly. I want the vibe to calm down. Late work nights got described with words like uncomfortable or interesting. That's the word people used when they didn't want to sound dramatic, but they also didn't want to lie. And then we get to the part I can't shake. The part that made me finally go, nope, I'm done. After about a decade, I decided to sell the building. I was exhausted. The repairs were draining money. The stress was eating me alive. Between the state of the world, business pressure, everything. My tank was empty. I just wanted out. One evening, I was finishing up listing paperwork with the realtor stuff spread out on a table. My adult daughter, her name's Rowan, was there with me, sitting across the open space. We were talking casually, and I made a stupid joke, something like, "Well, if there are any ghosts here, they're probably thrilled we're leaving." Rowan laughed, and I turned to walk across the warehouse floor toward the printer, and I slammed, full body, into something. Not stumbled, not tripped, not bumped a table. I hit something the way you hit a person when you both turn a corner too fast. Like there was momentum on the other side of the collision. I bounced backward. My arms flew out. I almost fell. It felt like getting checked, like an invisible shoulder to my chest. And it was so fast that for half a second, I didn't even trust my own eyes. It was like a shadow was there, and then it was gone. So quick it barely registered visually, but my body knew what happened. And the floor was clean concrete, wide open. Nothing to snag on, nothing hanging, no cords, no tools. No chance of me clotheslining myself on something. I froze and I shouted. Something very eloquent, like, "Oh my God, did you see that?" Rowan didn't answer right away. She just stared at me with this look I can still picture. Eyes wide, face drained, like her brain was trying to reboot. And then she said, "We're leaving. Right now." Because she had seen it. We didn't turn off lights. We didn't tidy up. We didn't do the normal end-of-night routine. We just got in the car and left. After that, we basically begged friends to help us move out faster. Because we dealt with years of weird little things, sounds, shadows, cold spots, equipment mishaps. But this was different. This felt like intent. And I still replay that moment and wonder, was it reacting to the joke? Was it like, "Oh, you think this is funny?" Here's the part that makes it worse. I'm not a spooky person. I'm not spiritual. I'm not the crystal and incense type. I'm not sitting around believing in goblins or angels or anything like that. I'm the person who wants a scientific explanation. I love science fiction because it's imaginative, not because I think it's real. I spent 10 years trying to rationalize every strange thing that happened in that building. But unless I had a one-time neurological event that perfectly mimicked getting body checked by an invisible person, something hit me. I hope the new owners have better luck than we did. And yes, my realtor actually told me, please do not mention ghosts to potential buyers. Which, fair. Very fair. Oh, and there's one more thing. A parallel story that still makes my skin prickle. One of my older employees, Linda, tough, no nonsense, the kind of woman who'd laugh at a horror movie, used to work security at that federal facility up the road back in the 90s. She told me the security team had stories. A lot of them. Things people saw on the desert grounds, things people heard. And there was some history out there. Incidents decades back, and the older layers of who lived on that land long before any modern buildings showed up. One evening, Linda was doing a foot patrol on the outer perimeter at dusk. Empty desert. Buildings far away. Nobody near her. And a voice spoke right next to her head, clear as if someone was standing at her shoulder. She said she barely had the presence of mind to reach for her weapon. She spun around, once, twice, scanning the dark like her eyes could catch whatever her brain didn't want to accept. And then she ran, full sprint back to the buildings. She said people did prank each other out there sometimes, but there was no way. No footsteps, no radios, no one close enough, no place for someone to hide. Just open ground and a voice that didn't belong. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe the area holds on to things. Maybe there's a logical explanation we just never found. Maybe it was all coincidence stacked so high it started to feel like a pattern. All I know is this: I've never been so relieved to leave a building behind. Okay, so this happened about 7 years ago, and I'm gonna tell it the best I can, because even now it still sits weird in my chest when I think about it. Back then, I was living in the biggest city in my state, one of those places where parts of downtown still feel like they belong to another century. Lots of old brick, lots of history nobody really talks about unless you go digging for it. I didn't know anything about the history of this particular building, though. It was this budget hotel, one of those roadside chains you don't really notice until you need somewhere cheap and quiet for a night. My girlfriend at the time, she's my wife now, let's call her Marina. We were both around 20, still living with my parents, still trying to act grown while also not having anywhere to just be alone. So we do what a lot of young couples do: grab a room somewhere in town, order junk food, pretend we were adults with our own lives for a few hours. And just for a little context, Marina and we've always been a little tuned in, I guess. I've had my share of strange stuff, seeing shadows move where they shouldn't, hearing things when nobody's there, dreams that feel like they're happening in places that don't exist. Marina's the same way. She's had those visitation dreams, the kind where you wake up knowing you weren't just imagining it. So paranormal things? Not exactly new. Not exactly welcome either. More like something that follows you whether you invite it or not. So we check in, get the room, everything seems normal at first. That kind of normal you get at a cheap hotel. Thin walls, flickering hallway lights, that faint smell of old cleaner that never fully covers what came before. Then it starts. First, there's this scream. Not like someone laughing too loud or shouting at a TV. This was a full, sharp, disembodied scream. The kind that makes you freeze with your hand halfway to the remote. But we did that thing people do when they don't want to deal with the implications. We shrugged it off. It's a hotel, we told ourselves. People fight, people party, people do weird stuff. You hear things. Whatever. And then came the laughter. Not adults, not teenagers messing around. Kids. Like little kids. And babies. That's what got under our skin. Because you can explain a lot away in a cheap hotel, but you don't expect to hear babies giggling down the hall at night like there's a nursery party happening in the walls. Marina looked at me like, "You hearing that too?" And I remember that moment so clearly, because it was the last moment where we had a choice to leave. We didn't leave. We got into bed and tried to ignore it, like we'd ignored other strange things in our lives. And that was the mistake. Sometime after I fell asleep, I woke up, and Marina wasn't next to me. At first, I was just annoyed and groggy, like, where'd she go? I checked the bathroom. Empty. So I figured she stepped out for a smoke or went to grab something from the car. I grabbed the key card, pulled on my shoes, and opened the door. And the hallway was wrong. It didn't look different in a way I could point to immediately. Same carpet, same bland walls, same doors. But it was longer. Way longer. Like the building had stretched while I was asleep. And there were branches, little side hallways leading off at angles that shouldn't exist. I even remember thinking, wait, wasn't there a window right there? Like I had this clear memory of the layout and suddenly it didn't match. That's when it clicked. Oh, I'm dreaming. I started walking faster, still thinking I'd find Marina somewhere ahead. And then I heard it again. Those baby laughs. Only closer, like they were just around the corner. Then the sound twisted. The laughter became crying, and the crying became screaming. If you've ever heard a baby in real pain, real panic, you know there's something in it that goes straight past your brain and into your body. It hits something primal. Your stomach drops. Your skin goes cold. Your heart starts slamming like it's trying to get out. That sound filled the hallway, and I started running. Not jogging, running like my life depended on it. And then the faces started showing up. At first, it was just glimpses, like shapes on the carpet pattern that weren't really there. But then they became clear. Baby faces, contorted, crying, mouths open too wide. Some looked pressed into the walls like they were trying to push through. Some were on the ceiling. Some were on the doors, like wallpaper that had turned into living skin. And the screaming was everywhere. I'm sprinting through hallways that won't end, and the building keeps unfolding in front of me like it's growing new corridors just to keep me inside it. And the faces multiply until they're not just on surfaces, they're in the air, surrounding me, circling me, closing in. I can't even explain how terrified I was, because it wasn't just fear. It was like my body was responding to something it recognized as wrong on a level I couldn't control. And then, out of nowhere, I turned a corner and there she was, Marina, standing there like she'd been running too, eyes wide, like she'd just stumbled into me the same way I'd stumbled into her. And the moment I saw her, we both screamed, and we both woke up. At the exact same time. We sat bolt upright in bed, both yelling, both soaked in sweat like we'd run miles. My shirt was damp, my hair was wet. My heart felt like it was trying to punch through my ribs. Marina looked just as wrecked as I felt. It took a minute for either of us to even speak. When we finally calmed down enough to talk, Marina told me her side. And that's when I got that cold, sinking feeling, because her dream matched mine. The same place, the same laughter turning into screaming, the same endless hallway feeling. Except in her dream, it started differently. She said she was outside the room, like we'd stepped out to smoke together. She'd leaned against the wall, half dozed off. And then everything slid sideways into that nightmare world, like the building pulled her in from the outside while it pulled me in from the inside. Same night, same dream, same terror. We didn't debate it. We didn't try to rationalize it. We packed up in this jittery silence, hands shaking a little, moving too fast like staying still might make it come back. We were out of there within the hour. When we dropped the key at the desk, the person working, let's call him Darren, barely reacted. Just took it, nodded, like people leaving in the middle of the night was the most normal thing in the world. Maybe it was. Maybe he saw it all the time. Or maybe he'd seen that before. We never went back. And for a long time after, every time I drove past where that building used to be, my whole body would tense up before my mind even caught up with why. That deep, involuntary chill, like some part of me was warning the rest of me not to look too long. I think the building's gone now. Torn down, replaced, whatever. But I still remember those hallways. And sometimes, just sometimes, when I wake up in the middle of the night and the house is too quiet, So, this goes back to when I was around 12, when my life got rearranged overnight. My mom and my stepdad, Derek, had just moved us into this bigger townhouse. New place, new smells, that weird echo you only notice at night. It was me, my little sister Maya, she was about 10 then, and our brand new baby brother, Eli, who was still in that newborn phase where everything is soft and quiet. Except the crying, obviously. Anyway, the first night it happened, I woke up because I had to pee. Like, really had to pee. And I remember lying there for a second, trying to convince myself I could ignore it and go back to sleep. But before I even sat up, I saw something in the corner of my room. At first, my brain tried to do that thing where it makes it into a pile of clothes or a shadow from the window. You know, anything normal. But it wasn't normal. There was a kid sitting in the corner, on the floor, knees pulled up to their chest, arms wrapped tight around their legs like they were trying to disappear into themselves. The only part of their face I could clearly make out were their eyes, peeking just over their knees, and they were staring right at me. Not curious, not confused, just locked in. I didn't think. I didn't even breathe first. I just screamed, like full animal panic, until my mom came storming in, flipping the light on so fast it felt like the room got punched with brightness. And the corner was empty. No kid, no shape, nothing. Just the corner of a room in a townhouse that suddenly felt wrong. I was shaking so hard I couldn't explain it properly, just crying and pointing and babbling, and I ended up sleeping on the floor in my mom and Derek's room that night because I couldn't stand being alone in mine. And I really thought that was it. I really, really wanted that to be it. But a few weeks later, same house, it happened again. Same setup, middle of the night, waking up needing to pee, because apparently I refused to learn my lesson about drinking anything before bed. I opened my eyes and immediately knew something was different. There was a figure standing right beside my bed. Not in the corner this time, right there, like it had been waiting for me to wake up. It was tall, too tall for the room to feel comfortable, and it was leaning slightly forward, staring down at me like it was studying me. And I remember this horrible detail. It didn't blink, not once. Just this fixed, heavy gaze that made my skin go tight all over. I couldn't move. I couldn't even sit up. My body felt glued to the mattress. And then it bent down toward my face, slowly, so slowly. And it got closer and closer until it was just inches away. I could feel my heart beating in my throat. And then it opened its mouth. Not like a person, not like anything I've ever seen. Its mouth just stretched wider than it should have been able to, like the rules didn't apply to it. And it screamed. It wasn't a normal scream. It wasn't even an animal scream. It was loud and sharp and wrong, like something mechanical trying to imitate a human sound but failing. I screamed too, at the exact same time, like my body finally snapped out of being frozen and chose pure survival. I launched myself off the bed, ran to the door, and yanked it open so hard it slammed into the wall. I actually left a dent. Later, in daylight, there was a real mark there, like proof it wasn't just a nightmare. I sprinted down the hall to my mom and Derek's room and grabbed the handle. Locked. Of course it was locked. And here's the part that still messes with me. They didn't hear anything. Not me screaming down the hallway, not the scream from the thing right beside my bed. Nothing. They thought I'd had a nightmare, until they saw my face and realized this was beyond bad dream territory. Even now, telling you this, I can feel that old, cold fear creeping back in. Like my body remembers before my brain does. I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it. And I know how it sounds. I do. But those 2 nights in that townhouse, they still feel real in a way I can't explain away. So, my mom passed away late August last year, and ever since then, our apartment hasn't felt quite the same. The hardest part is that I wasn't even there when it happened. I was on the other side of the world, wrapping up the final day of a trip, standing in an airport with my suitcase at my feet, telling myself I'd be home soon. But soon didn't matter. I didn't make it in time to say goodbye, and that still sits in my chest like a stone. When I finally got home, I tried to fall back into normal life. Work, dishes, laundry, the usual routine. But within days, these little things started happening. At first, I told myself it was grief doing weird tricks, or jet lag, or stress. But then it started happening at night. I'd be half asleep and feel this sensation on my face, like someone gently brushing my cheek, almost like a fingertip made of static. And then the duvet would tug, slowly, like someone was carefully pulling it back. Sometimes the mattress would dip near my legs, like someone had sat down on the edge of the bed. Not a dramatic slam, just this soft, unmistakable compression. And the thing is, it didn't happen once. It kept happening. Some weeks it was every other night. Other times it would stop for a bit, and I'd start thinking, okay, maybe I imagined it. And then it would happen again. I told my wife, Lena, and she gave me that look people give you when they love you, but think you're reading too much into things. Like, babe, you're exhausted. I couldn't blame her. If I hadn't been the one feeling it, I'm not sure I would have believed it either. Until one morning she came into the bedroom getting ready for work, hair half done, and she goes, really casually at first, "Did you make tea at 5?" And I said, "What? No." She just stared at me and said, "The kettle clicked on by itself. I heard it. 5 in the morning." That was the first time I saw her expression shift from skeptical to unsettled. After that, there was this week where little things kept happening close together, like the apartment was trying to prove a point. One night, the electric toothbrush started buzzing in the bathroom, full on, like someone had pressed the button and walked away. Lena tried to switch it off, and she swears it wouldn't stop. She was standing there in the dark, whispering my name, panicking like it was some horror movie moment. I didn't wake up right away, but when I finally did, hours later, it stopped the moment I picked it up, like it had been waiting for me. And then there was the travel thing. We've always talked about moving someday. I've always pictured us in Australia. Sunlight, coastline, a fresh start. Lena's been set on New Zealand for years. Mountains, quiet, the kind of peace she says she can feel just thinking about it. We've got these travel books on the shelf in the living room, right? And on 3 separate occasions, 3, Lena's New Zealand book has flung off the shelf and landed open on the floor right in front of us. Not slid, not tipped, actually launched, like it had somewhere to be. The first time we laughed, nervous laughing, you know? The second time we just stared. The third time, Lena didn't say a word. She just slowly picked it up, set it back, and walked away like she didn't want to acknowledge it out loud. Then one evening, about a week later, I was in the kitchen, standing right next to the kettle. I wasn't even thinking about any of this stuff. I was just there. And the kettle flicked on by itself. I felt my whole body go cold. On top of all that, there are the sounds. Bumps. Knocks. The kind of little bangs you'd usually blame on pipes or neighbors. Except they happen at odd times, and sometimes they sound close, like inside the room with you. And the night stuff never really stopped. Just last night, I felt it again. That faint electric tickle feeling against my cheek, then down along my jaw, then the duvet shifting, slowly pulling, like someone trying to tuck me in or uncover me. I can't even tell which. Sometimes it scares me. Other times, it's almost familiar, like it's trying to be gentle. I hate admitting this, but I've gotten used to it. Most nights now, if it happens, I just lie there and breathe through it and tell myself, "You're okay." And if I can, I fall back asleep. It's been going on for about 7 months, on and off, long enough that I can't pretend it was just a rough patch right after she died. long enough that I keep circling back to the same question, even when I don't want to. Is it my mom? Or is it grief and nerves and an overactive mind turning normal little glitches into a story I'm desperate to understand? I honestly don't know. I just know something feels different in this apartment now. And whether it's her or not, I'm left with this strange mix of fear and comfort. Like whatever it is, it hasn't come to hurt me. But I still wish I knew what it wanted, or what I'm supposed to do with it. So this happened when my sister and I were little, maybe 9 and 10-ish. It was one of those super normal weekend routines where mom and dad would run out for groceries, and we'd get to camp out upstairs and play video games like it was our sacred duty. That day, we'd just gotten a new game, and we were completely locked in. Like the kind of focused where you don't even hear your own thoughts. The sun was out, bright and warm, and it was mid-afternoon. Everything felt light and easy. Then, from downstairs, I hear it. Girls! Except, okay, our names weren't girls, but you know what I mean. Dad always called out like that when they got back. It was basically a tradition. He'd shout once, and we'd ignore it because we were always upstairs and always in the middle of something. And then he'd shout a second time, slightly louder, slightly more irritated, and that was the cue. The, okay, we're coming moment. My sister, Naomi, and I didn't even look at each other. We just kept playing, totally confident the second call was coming. But it didn't. At first, it's funny, like, ooh, Dad's testing us today. But then it got odd. A few minutes passed, then more. And I remember this specific feeling creeping in. The kind where your brain starts tapping you on the shoulder like, hey, something's off. So I finally paused the game because I'm that kid. The kid who can't just ignore a weird detail. I walk over to the kitchen window upstairs and look out toward the driveway to see what the delay is. And the car isn't there. Not backed in weird or parked around the side, just not there at all. Empty driveway. I turn and go, Naomi, the car's not in the driveway. She keeps playing like half a second longer, because of course she does. Then I say it again, kind of louder, because it feels so wrong. She finally pauses, pops up, and comes over to the window. We're both staring out at the same, totally normal, totally sunny afternoon, with no car. So we rush downstairs. I remember us moving fast, like our bodies decided before our brains did. The front door is still locked. That part made it even weirder, because our parents always locked it when they left. So if the car's gone and the door's locked, then they haven't come back. Which means nobody should have been downstairs calling us. Naomi and I just stand there for a moment, looking at each other, talking over each other. Like, did you hear it? That was Dad, right? Why would we both hear it? We tried to make it make sense the way kids do. Like if you just talk long enough, the universe will finally admit it made a mistake. Eventually, because we were kids and also because we didn't know what else to do, we went back upstairs. We probably checked the window again, at least once. Then we went back to the game, but the whole vibe had shifted. Naomi got back into it faster, but I kept listening with half my attention, waiting for that voice again. That exact tone. And then, after what felt like a long time, maybe 20 minutes, maybe an hour, I honestly couldn't tell you. Girls! Same voice, same inflection, same everything. Both of us shot up instantly, like we'd been launched. We ran to the kitchen window. Now the car was there. Right in the driveway, like it had been there all along. Like nothing strange had ever happened. We start babbling at them, excited and freaked out at the same time, telling them, You called us earlier, but your car wasn't here. We were trying to explain it in one breath, because that's how kids talk when something feels huge. And I remember my dad just kind of blinking at us, confused, like, "What are you talking about?" But Naomi and I weren't confused about what we heard, because we both heard it, clear as day. And even now, thinking back, what sticks with me isn't just the voice. It's that feeling of waiting for the second call that never came, and realizing we'd already answered something that hadn't actually arrived. So, I don't have proof this happened. This was back in the late 90s, except for a couple of old photos of us outside the place, grinning like idiots in our two big coats. But it's one of those memories that never faded, you know? The kind that sits in you like a pebble you can't shake out of your shoe, no matter how many years pass. It was a school trip to the Isle of Wight, one of those character-building residential weeks where they stick you in an old activity center and tell you you're going to have the time of your life. We did the usual stuff: archery, a muddy team challenge where you had to crawl under ropes, some kind of night walk where they made it sound brave and mystical, but really it was just freezing and confusing. We stayed in this big, old building, chalky white walls, creaky everywhere, smells like damp towels and industrial cleaner. Girls' dorm on one side, boys' dorm on the other, and those narrow hallways lit by these dim, overly warm bulbs that made everything look slightly sickly. Even now I can picture it perfectly, like it's burned into the back of my eyes. In our dorm, the beds were these red metal bunk beds, proper sturdy, the kind that clanged if you moved too fast. I was in the top bunk of the bed closest to the door. If you walked into the room, you'd look left and there I'd be, up near the ceiling. My friend at the time, let's call her Maisie, had the bottom bunk under me. Opposite our bed was a wide, low window, almost the length of the bunks. The middle section didn't open, but there were two narrow side panels that could, like little vents. At night, with the room light on, the window was basically a mirror. You couldn't see outside at all, just your own reflection, and the faint shapes of bunk beds behind you. That's the part where people always hope I'm going to say, "And then I saw a face," or, "And something tapped at the glass." But no, nothing like that. Just our own reflections staring back. Maisie and I were up on my top bunk together, squished side by side. I was on the left against the wall, and she was on the right nearer the door. We had these comic annuals I'd brought, different ones than everyone else had, which felt very important at the time, and they were spread all over the duvet like treasure. The rest of the room was doing that sleepy pre-lights out thing, little clusters of whispering, someone giggling too loudly and getting shushed, the occasional bunk bed squeal as someone turned over. And then, it went quiet. I can't tell you if the whole dorm genuinely fell silent at once, or if it was just my brain suddenly cutting all the other noise out. But something in me changed instantly. My stomach dropped. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up like I'd been brushed by static. It was the first time I ever felt that really clean animal fear. Fight or flight. No explanation, no logic. Just this absolute certainty. Something is wrong. And without thinking, my head snapped up toward the window. In the corner of my vision, Maisie did the exact same thing at the exact same time. Like we were puppets yanked by the same string. And then the curtains closed. Not slowly, not drifting. They snapped shut, fast, hard, with purpose. Like someone had grabbed them halfway up and yanked. I remember the fabric pinching in the middle as it moved, the way it crinkled like fingers had squeezed it. And what made it worse, so much worse, was the total, glaring absence of anyone actually being there. For a split second, Maisie and I just stared. Then we looked at each other, at the same time again, eyes wide. And the second we realized we'd both seen it, together, that suspended feeling snapped like a rubber band breaking. We screamed, proper screamed, The whole dorm exploded into chaos. Girls sitting up, people shouting, "What? What happened?" Somebody crying, someone else yelling for a teacher. And a teacher came charging in from wherever he'd been posted that night, looking like he'd been dragged out of a half-sleep and fully ready to be annoyed. Maisie and I were babbling over each other, trying desperately to explain something that sounded ridiculous even as we said it. "The curtains, they closed by themselves, like someone pulled them, hard." He did that adult thing where you can tell he's trying to make it fit into a sensible box. He said maybe one of the girls near the window did it. But the girl in the bottom bunk by the window was asleep, proper asleep, the kind where your mouth is open and your limbs are floppy. And the curtain had moved with the sort of force you'd feel if you were doing it on purpose, not half asleep. Then he tried, maybe someone outside did it. Which, honestly, not the comforting explanation he thought it was, because the window didn't open in the middle, and the way the curtains moved looked like it happened inside the room, not from some hand reaching in from the outside. And also, what kind of person is creeping around outside a girl's dorm at night on a school trip? He promised he'd come back. Said he'd sleep on the floor in the dorm for a bit, just so we'd feel better. He turned off the light, which had been on the whole time, and told us to settle down. And then he left. And he never came back. So there we were, in the dark, with that curtain shut like it was hiding something important. Maisie and I pulled our comics back out because we didn't know what else to do. We whispered. We held hands. Every now and then we'd glance at the shape of the window and feel that same cold ripple move through us, like our bodies remembered before our brains could. Eventually, exhaustion won. We fell asleep the way kids do after crying, suddenly, without meaning to, like your system just powers down. I've had other strange moments in my life, before and after, but that one sticks out. Maybe because it was so simple. No shadowy figure, no ghostly voice. Just one sharp, deliberate movement that made something ancient inside me sit up and snarl. Danger. And even now, years later, that's the one my body remembers first. So, I've been wondering if anyone else has ever had weird, almost paranormal moments with their Alexa devices, like they're accidentally acting as these little DIY spirit boxes. My mom, Evelyn, passed away suddenly at our old family home in spring of 2021. It hit hard, really hard. We were incredibly close. A few months later, since I'd been named the one to handle everything, my husband Noah and I moved into the house to sort through her things and get the estate settled. We kept her urn on a low shelf in the living room, kind of tucked into a spot that felt right. We've had Alexa speakers for years, one in almost every room. Lights, alarms, music, all that. And at first, a few odd things happened that felt easy to explain. Like, occasionally, music would just start playing in the living room near the urn. Not unheard of. Those devices mishear things all the time. I'd tell it to stop, then open the app to see what it thought it heard. Except there was never any record. No command. No history. Just music that supposedly never happened. Still, I brushed it off. Then one afternoon, my sister Lena called to tell me something that made my stomach drop. My mom's old dog, the one a neighbor had taken in after Mom died, had passed away. Apparently, he'd gotten into the yard and been bitten by something. It was one of those calls where you hang up and just sit there staring at nothing, you know? That night, it happened again. The living room speaker started playing music out of nowhere. I asked, "Alexa, what's playing?" And she answered, all cheerful and matter-of-fact, "Now playing Goodbye, My Friend by..." some artist name I didn't even catch. And I swear to you, the timing made my skin prickle. It was so weirdly specific, so strangely appropriate, that it didn't feel random anymore. But even then, no proof, right? Just my brain looking for meaning because grief does that. A couple weeks later, I had one of those heavy days where everything felt raw again. I was sitting in the living room, alone, talking out loud to my mom like I sometimes did. Nothing dramatic, just honest. Like, I miss you and I don't know what I'm doing, and all the stuff you say when you don't have anywhere else to put it. At some point, I said, Noah and I might actually buy the house, stay here for good. The second the words left my mouth, the Alexa in the kitchen lit up, bright, unmistakable, and a little clip of music played. Not a full song, just this quick burst, like the chorus of a bunch of people singing, "Oh honey, you're welcome," all bright and upbeat. I caught a flash of the album art in blue tones, then it vanished, like it had blinked in and out. I went straight to the app, heart pounding, thumb shaking a little because I felt silly and freaked out at the same time. And again, nothing. No history, no command, no played on kitchen speaker, no record of anything. And here's the part I can't stop thinking about. We'd owned those speakers for years, used them in 2 different homes before that, and nothing like this ever happened. Not once. Only in that house. Only after she was gone. And only when it felt like I needed an answer most. So, we moved into this place back in early fall. Me, my wife, and our little boy who'd just turned 1. The house is old, like creeping up on a century old. It has that smell of wood and time, and the kind of floors that sigh when you walk across them. And I swear, I could probably spend the next 10 years telling stories that start with, okay, so in this house. The first thing happened on one of our first nights. We were finally unpacked enough to sleep, and I was lying there with my bedside lamp on, just staring up at the ceiling while my wife, Maya, was already out cold. And then, I see it. A shadow. A silhouette, really. Big body. Broad shoulders. Like this heavy-set man shape just sort of leaning over my side of the bed. And here's the thing. Nothing was between the lamp and the ceiling. No coat rack. No weird angle. No open door doing something dramatic. Nothing that should have made that shape. But I'm not someone who panics easily. I've watched enough horror movies to know the fastest way to make something feel real is to feed it your fear. So I just blinked, stared at it a second longer, and in my head I was like, okay, noted. Then I rolled over and went to sleep like I didn't just see a stranger-shaped shadow hovering over me. After that, it was the usual old house stuff. Creaks, pops, little taps that could easily be the house settling. We told ourselves that a lot. The house is settling. It became our comfort phrase. Then, a few weeks later, we had this weird little incident that felt petty almost, like the house was messing with us for fun. We'd found this small Italian grocery, one of those places where everything feels special, and we bought this can of fancy DOP San Marzano tomatoes. I was excited about it in a way that's embarrassing to admit, because it's just tomatoes, right? But I'd been saving them for a proper pasta night. So I'm cooking, water's boiling, everything's moving. I go to grab the tomatoes and they're gone. Not, I can't see them gone. I mean, gone. I tore through the pantry. I checked every cabinet. I even checked places that made no sense, like the fridge, because when you're annoyed, you start doing stupid, hopeful things. Maya helped me look too. We searched like it was an important document. Nothing. So I'm irritated, because now I'm mid-cooking and I have to run out for a replacement, and also because I was genuinely excited about those stupid tomatoes. I even thought, maybe Maya's sister, Tessa, accidentally grabbed them when we all went shopping together. I meant to text her, but the night got away from me. The next morning, I opened the pantry to make breakfast, and the can is sitting right there, front and center, like it's on display. Like it's saying, "Oh, you mean these?" I just stood there staring for a second. Then I called Maya over, and the look on her face, because she knew. We both knew we didn't miss it. We both looked right through that exact spot multiple times. We laughed it off in that forced way you do when you don't want to say what you're actually thinking. Like, haha, okay, weird, pantry gremlins. Then came the night that didn't feel funny. Bedtime with our son is a routine. Same order every night. Bath, pajamas, book, song. It's comforting, predictable. It makes the world feel normal. But one night, I turned off the light and started singing his lullaby. This time it was "If It's Magic" by Stevie Wonder, and I got hit with the strongest chills I've ever felt in my life. Not a little shiver, not, ooh, spooky. It was like my whole scalp tightened, like waves of goosebumps rolled over my head and neck and down my arms. I could feel it in my bones. Someone was watching, and again, I'm not easily scared. So my instinct was almost stubborn. I sang louder, stronger, like if I filled the space with something beautiful and steady, whatever was pressing in would have to back off. But the chills wouldn't stop. I started sweating, cold, clammy sweat, like my body was reacting on its own even while my mind was trying to stay calm. For a second, I almost scooped my son up and left the room. That's how intense it was. But I finished the song. I finished the routine. I whispered the little affirmations I always tell him, and when he finally fell asleep and I stepped out into the hallway, the relief was immediate, like I'd been holding my breath without realizing it. That night, he woke up around 11, and he didn't just fuss. He woke up, wide awake, crying hard, calling for us like something scared him. Maya went in to soothe him and ended up nursing him, which she hadn't done in a long time. I didn't stop her. After what I'd felt in that room, I was just grateful she was there with him. The next morning, I woke up from a nightmare, and I don't usually get rattled by bad dreams. Normally, I forget them and move on, but this one snapped me awake with this sudden image. This woman's face, right there, like a jump scare. I don't even remember the rest, just the face, and the feeling that lingered afterward, like static on my skin. Later that day, Maya told me something that made my stomach drop. She said while she was in our son's room the night before, soothing him, she kept having these horrible, intrusive thoughts. Dark, unsettling stuff she couldn't explain. Not like her. Not normal. And that's when I finally told her what happened to me in that room. The chills, the presence, the way it felt crowded with something I couldn't see. We agreed we needed to cleanse the house, but we had plans and errands, so we said we'd do it the next day. And of course, because of course, that night, when I went to do bedtime again, it was worse. Same pressure, same feeling, like the air itself was watching me. I came out afterward and showed Maya my shirt. My back was soaked in sweat like I'd run a mile, except it was this cold sweat, like my body was trying to warn me. The next day, we did it. We got sage and a sweetgrass braid and a little bundle of mugwort. I walked through every room, twice. I prayed out loud. I cleansed the doorways, the mirrors, especially the mirrors. I didn't rush it. I meant it, like I was speaking directly to whatever might be there. This is our home. You don't get to harm us. You don't get to frighten our child. Afterward, the vibe shifted. It didn't vanish completely, but it felt thinner, weaker. like whatever was pressing down had lost some of its grip. That night, when I did bedtime, I closed my eyes while I sang, and instead of feeling that heavy watchfulness, I felt something else. Like my ancestors were around me, supportive, steady, like hands on my shoulders. I felt grounded in a way I hadn't in weeks. I came out and told Maya, "It's better. It's not gone, but it's better." Then yesterday happened, and this is the part that's messing with me the most. Yesterday was chaos. We were dropping our son off with my cousin for a few hours, and I was trying to prep snacks while also cooking lunch. I used 2 cutting boards, 2 knives, one for meat and one for fruit. I remember this clearly because I'm weird about cross-contamination. I'm careful. I'm particular. We did the drop-off. I ran errands. By the time I got back, we were on the go again, and the kitchen stayed messy. Not disgusting, just busy. Later, I cooked dinner. Then bedtime. After I put him down, Maya and I cleaned the kitchen together. Everything got washed. Everything got put away or set out to dry. I remember Maya teasing me because I usually do the knives immediately, and I checked, like I always do, that they were handled safely. We went to bed. This morning, I'm making breakfast. I'm cutting an orange for our son, and I reach for the smaller knife, the one I used for fruit yesterday, and it's not there. Gone. Not in the sink, not in the drying rack, not in the drawer, not under a towel, not stuck in a cutting board. I searched the kitchen like a person looking for a contact lens. I checked places it couldn't possibly be. I even checked the trash because my brain went, what if it got wrapped in paper towels and tossed by accident? Nothing. And here's where I'm stuck. A missing can of tomatoes is annoying. It's weird, but you can laugh it off. A missing knife is different. That's not funny. That's not harmless. So I don't know what this house is doing. I don't know if it's just old house chaos and stressed out new parents' brains. I don't know if it's energy or memory or something that doesn't like being ignored. But I do know this. I'm not interested in coexisting with anything that plays games with sharp objects. And I'm trying to figure out, do I keep ignoring it? Or do I get louder about protecting this home? Because whatever this is, it needs to understand one thing really clearly. We live here now, and our baby does too. So last September, late in the month, when the evenings start getting that sharp, cool edge, I was talking with my friend Mara about a backcountry trip she did in Algonquin. And I'm telling you, I have known Mara forever. She's basically been outdoors since she could walk. Canoe routes, remote campsites, all of it. She's the kind of person who stays calm when everyone else panics. But when she told me this story, her voice kept tightening like she was back in it. Like she couldn't shake the feeling of it. She and her brother Evan were camping out near Islet Lake. Not a busy front country spot, real backcountry. The kind of place where once the sun drops, it's just water, wind, and tree line for miles. That evening, right around sundown, they took the canoe out to try their luck fishing. The lake was calm, glassier than you'd expect. Clear sky. No clouds, no weird weather. Just that golden light fading fast. They're paddling along, talking quietly, when Mara suddenly hears this sound behind them. And she described it as like a sparkler, you know? That crackly, fizzing hiss, but bigger. Not right beside her, up above them. The sound moves. That's the part she kept coming back to. It didn't just happen. It traveled. It came from behind their canoe, passed directly overhead, and kept going in a straight line toward the far shore, toward the tree line across the lake. Mara instinctively lifted her head, tracking it by sound. Evan did the same. They even looked at each other like, "Are you hearing this?" Because they both were. But they couldn't see anything. Nothing in the sky. Nothing reflecting light. No shape. No streak. Just that crackling sound sliding across the air like it had a path. And then, right as it reached the tree line on the opposite shore, they heard this huge, heavy crash. Mara told me it sounded like a massive tree coming down, like the kind of sound that makes your stomach drop because it's so solid and final. But here's the thing. They didn't see a splash, didn't see a tree fall, didn't see branches moving, didn't see anything, just sound. And then nothing. Mara said her first thought was something like a meteor or debris, something that burned and fell. But the movement didn't match what you'd expect. It wasn't a fast streak. It was slower, almost controlled. She said maybe closer to how a drone might move, except it didn't sound like a drone, not even remotely. And they know drone noise. They've heard them in parks before, even though they're not supposed to be out there. This was different. This was wrong, in a way that's hard to explain. Not a bird, not insects, not wind. And the height, she estimated it was around tree line level, not way up in the clouds, like it was skimming above the tops. At that point, both of them were done fishing, just instantly done. They turned the canoe and paddled back to camp, kind of fast, not saying much. That quiet, tense kind of paddling where you're trying not to admit you're scared, but your body already decided. They had two other friends waiting back at the campsite, Jules and Nico. And as Mara and Evan started pulling the canoe up onto shore, Mara happened to look across the lake again. And that's when she saw the lights. Not one light, multiple. Scattered along the tree line on the far side. Some low near the forest floor, some higher up like they were in the branches, and some that looked like they were right around the canopy line. They were pulsating. White light, then amber, then white again. Not in sync. Different points blinking at different rhythms, like the whole tree line was quietly signaling back at them. Jules and Nico walked down to the water to see what was going on, and the second they arrived, they saw it too. So now it's 4 people, standing at the edge of this darkening lake, staring across at a forest that should be completely black, watching it blink back. And nobody could explain it. Mara told me they pulled out their map, hands shaking a bit, and checked the far side. No campsites marked over there. No nearby portage. No trail cutting close. No reason anyone should be there, especially not with multiple lights spread out like that. And it wasn't like there was a road anywhere near it. It wasn't cottage country. It was deep in, the kind of remote where you don't just wander over by accident. The lights went on like that for a short time, long enough for all of them to be sure they weren't imagining it, then eventually faded, leaving the far shore dark again. Mara said the worst part wasn't even the lights. It was the way the whole thing felt connected. The crackling sound traveling straight across the lake. The heavy crash exactly when it hit the tree line. And then those scattered pulses right where it seemed to land. When she told me this, she kept pausing, like she was waiting for her own brain to hand her a normal explanation. Like if she just described it carefully enough, it would turn into something reasonable. But it didn't. And even now, she said what unsettles her most is how calm the night was otherwise. No storm, no chaos, no obvious source. Just that quiet wilderness, and then that one strange thing moving through it like it belonged there. So yeah, I believe her, completely. And I can't stop wondering, has anyone else ever had something like that happen out there? Something you couldn't pin down, no matter how hard you tried. So, I want to tell you about my granddad, because he's been sitting heavy in my chest lately. He died pretty suddenly back in 2021, It was this fast, brutal kind of cancer that didn't really give anyone time to wrap their head around it. He'd been raised deeply religious, old-school Catholic, the kind of faith that shaped everything about how he lived. And when he passed, it was at home. My grandma there, all 5 of their kids around him. It was quiet in that way that doesn't feel real until later. Afterward, I went to see him at the viewing. And honestly, I wish I hadn't. I thought I was doing the right thing, like I'd regret it if I didn't go. But it hit me in a way I wasn't prepared for. Then, a few days later, I was one of the people helping carry his coffin down the aisle of the church for the funeral mass. And I'm not exaggerating when I say it felt like my brain couldn't decide whether to shut down or scream. It was so confronting. Like grief became physical, like it had weight. He'd lived with Parkinson's for years, too. Not the tremor kind. His was more like stiffness, like his body would lock up on him. When he moved, he didn't really walk so much as shuffle, and sometimes it came out like this weird shuffle run, like his feet were trying to catch up to his body. It could be unsettling if you didn't know him, but to us it was just him. It was his rhythm. Anyway, yesterday I went to visit my grandmother. I'll call her May, and she had this little portrait I'd made of Granddad hanging up where she could see it every day. Seeing it there, in her house, like he was still part of the room, it completely cracked something open in me. I didn't even realize how much I'd been holding back until that moment. Last night, I couldn't fall asleep for ages. It was like my mind kept wandering back through old memories without asking permission. The last time I checked the clock, it was just after 1 a.m., and I remember thinking, please, just let me switch off. But I'm someone who dreams really vividly, like the kind of dreams that don't fade when you wake up. They cling to you. And that's exactly what happened. In the dream, I'm lying flat on my back on a bed, but it isn't my room. The bed faces a doorway at the foot of it, and the door is already open. There's no lamp on, no warm light, just moonlight spilling in from somewhere beyond the doorway, faint and bluish. The room I'm in is pitch black, like the darkness has texture. And then I hear it. Fast, tight shuffling on the floor. That exact sound of someone moving in stiff little bursts. It's the kind of sound that makes your stomach drop because it's so specific, so familiar. I can't move. I can't sit up. I'm just stuck there, staring at that open doorway like it's the only thing in the world. In the room beyond, I can barely make out a figure, just a shadow shape, moving in circles, like doing laps. Back and forth, always in motion. And every time the figure gets close to the doorway, it stops and turns its head toward me. And it calls my name. But the voice is wrong in this really upsetting way, like it's trying to be my grandfather's voice, but it's thinner, higher pitched, almost strained. Not mocking, just off, like a recording played at the wrong speed. I never see a face, no features, nothing I can grab onto and say, that's him. It's only shadow and sound. And the strangest part is, the figure never crosses the threshold. It never steps into the dark room where I am. It just circles, approaches, calls my name, and circles again. Over and over and over, like it's stuck in a loop. And then I wake up, like someone yanked me out of sleep, 3:48 a.m. And that's the part that made me feel cold all over. Because I don't know the exact time my grandfather died, but I do know that around 4 a.m., my uncle woke my mom up in a panic and said, "Dad's gone." So now I'm sitting there in the light, breathing like I've run a mile, thinking, what was that? Was it just my brain? Was it grief? Was it my memory playing tricks on me? Or was it something else? I don't know. I genuinely don't know what it means, if it means anything at all. I just know I'm not looking forward to sleeping tonight. So, I've been sitting with this for a long time, and I don't really know how to say it without sounding dramatic, but there's always been something different about me. Ever since I was little, like toddler little, I was obsessed with cemeteries. Not in a spooky Halloween way, more like I needed to be near them. My mom, Nadia, still tells people how I used to cry in the back seat if we drove past one and didn't stop. I was 2 years old, begging like it mattered. And when she finally would pull over, I'd calm down instantly, like my body was finally where it was supposed to be. Some of my clearest early memories are honestly just sitting between headstones, the grass warm under my legs, the air quiet in a way I can't explain. My mom would keep her distance, watching me like she wasn't sure what she was seeing, and I'd just sit there, because I felt something there. Not like a voice in my head, more like a presence, like the place was holding its breath and I could feel it. And it wasn't just cemeteries. I've always had these ridiculously vivid dreams. Not the normal weird dream stuff. Like, these dreams would warn me, or show me details I had no way of knowing. When I was 6, I had this dream about a massive explosion in a crowded place. Sirens, smoke, people screaming. And a couple days later, my mom had the news on and there it was. Not the exact same images, but enough that my stomach dropped. Enough that I remember standing there, small and frozen, thinking, I've already seen this. I also used to dream about my own death a lot. And it was almost always fire, which is unsettling, because I've always been fascinated by fire. Not in a let me burn stuff way, more like I could stare into a flame forever, like it was trying to tell me something. That combination, dreaming about dying in fire while being weirdly drawn to it, made me feel like my brain was playing some cruel game with itself. Then there were the animals. This part makes me sound like I'm trying to be special, but I swear I'm not. I'd look at an animal, someone's dog, a barn cat, even a rabbit my neighbor kept, and sometimes I'd get this cold certainty, like a heavy drop in my chest, like something was already leaving them. People around me would be like, "What are you talking about? He's fine." And then, not long after, the animal would die. And every time it happened, I'd feel sick. Not because I was surprised, but because I wasn't. The strangest part, though? The things I've seen, or thought I saw. I don't know what to call it. My mom has this story she brings up whenever the topic gets even remotely spiritual. One time when I was little, 3, I think, my dad Leo was in the living room, and I pointed at this empty corner near the bookshelf. I told him, totally calm, "The little boy doesn't like men. He wants you to leave." Just like that. Like I was repeating something I'd been told. My dad still swears it didn't feel like make-believe. Not like an imaginary friend I'd invented for attention. More like I was reporting information. And I kept mentioning this boy, on and off, for years. Not constantly, just enough to make it worse. Enough that it stayed in their minds. Then one day, when I was 4, my mom found me at the window waving goodbye to an empty street. She asked who I was waving at, and I told her, "They figured out who hurt his mom, so he's gone now. He can go up." I didn't even feel scared when I said it. I remember feeling relieved, like something had finally finished. And then recently, something happened that brought all of this roaring back. It was outside my house, near the tree line. At first I thought it was just a trick of the light, but it looked like a deer skull, sharp, pale, pointed, peeking around a tree as if it was curious. I stared, looked away for a second because my brain was trying to catch up. And when I looked back, it had moved. I told myself, "Stop, you're spiraling. It's a branch, it's shadows." But I looked away again, just a reflex, like blinking. And when I turned back, I saw more of it. A long, dark neck, not solid exactly, more like a thick shadow forming itself into something with shape. And my first thought wasn't even about me. It was the neighborhood cats. We have these stray cats that wander around, and I'm stupidly protective of them. So for a second I panicked, thinking, if that's real, if that's something dangerous, I can't just leave them out here. And then that feeling hit me again. That heavy, unquestionable certainty. Not words exactly, but a message that landed in my body like a stone. The cats are not yours to protect. They belong with it. Back away. I hate even saying that. It sounds insane. But it was so strong that I listened without thinking. I backed into the house, slowly, like I didn't want to turn my back on whatever it was. I locked the door, and I stood there with my heart racing, feeling uneasy, but also, weirdly, like something had just clicked into place, like something was right, even though I didn't like it. There are more stories, a lot more, but it's late, and this is already long, and honestly, I'm tired of hearing myself sound like I'm trying to convince someone of something. I don't know what I'm looking for. Answers, maybe. A name for it. A way to not feel like I'm losing my grip. My mom used to say there was something attached to me. She used to say it like a fact, like it explained everything. Now she avoids the topic and jokes about how all that weird spiritual stuff following you freaks her out, and she doesn't know what to do with it. And I'm sitting here wondering if I'm just making meaning out of coincidence, or if there's actually something threaded into my life that I don't understand. I don't want to be dramatic. I just want to know what I'm dealing with, if it's anything at all. And if someone out there has insight, or even a way to frame this that doesn't make me feel crazy, I'd honestly be grateful. So, I've got to start by telling you about my cat, because he's kind of the whole reason this messed with my head so badly. His name was Jasper, this huge black tom with a chest like a little bulldozer. Every night, like clockwork, he'd wander down from upstairs and park himself at the foot of my bed. He didn't even have to do anything. Just being there made the room feel safer, like the dark couldn't get too close if Jasper was on duty. And here's a detail that matters. Our stairs and the whole basement-level hallway were carpeted. Thick carpet, too. When Jasper came down the stairs, you could always hear it. His claws would snag just a bit and make this soft, ripping sound, like Velcro peeling open. Step, rip. Step, rip. Sometimes it honestly sounded like a person trying to sneak around, but that little Velcro sound always gave him away. Okay. This happened on a school night, one of those nights where you really shouldn't be awake at all. I woke up suddenly, like my body yanked me out of sleep for no reason. The room was pitch black, and back then, I was terrified of the dark. Like real fear. The kind where your brain starts inventing shapes in the corners and your chest feels too tight. I didn't really grow out of it until I was older, late teens, because my childhood had a bunch of other weird, creepy moments that kind of trained me to be scared at night. So I wake up, heart already thumping, and I squint at my alarm clock. I can't remember the exact number, but it was somewhere around 2:45 a.m., give or take. I do what I always did back then. I pull the blanket up and hide, like somehow fabric can block fear. I'm lying there trying to slow my breathing, trying to convince myself I'm fine, trying not to spiral. And then I hear it. Footsteps. Slow. Steady. Coming down the stairs. At first my brain goes, oh, that's Jasper. Because that's what Jasper did. Came down, settled in, kept me calm. But then a second thought hits me so clearly it felt like someone said it out loud. There's no Velcro sound, no claw snag, no soft ripping, just footsteps. I freeze under the blanket, completely still, listening. The steps reach the bottom of the stairs and start moving along the hall, toward my room, and my brother's room across the way. And I'm just lying there thinking, please be the house settling. Please be something normal. Please be Jasper anyway. The footsteps come closer, closer, and then they stop. Right beside my bed. And I swear to you, in the silence that followed, I could hear breathing. Not my breathing, something else. Someone else. Like there was a person standing right next to me, just waiting. My whole body locks up. Not in that can't move at all way, but in that terrified way where you could move. You just don't dare. Because if you move, it becomes real. I'm thinking about the flashlight I kept tucked under my pillow. Just reaching for it would mean committing to the moment. But I keep telling myself, if I shine the light, it'll prove it's nothing. It has to be nothing. Then, this is the part that still makes my stomach twist. I feel the mattress sink down near my feet, like someone sat on the edge of the bed. Not a gentle shift either. A distinct dip. Weight. Pressure. I nearly screamed. I'm under the blanket with my eyes open wide, staring into darkness I can't even see through, and my heart feels like it's trying to punch its way out of my ribs. And eventually I have this thought, this weird, calm surrender. Okay, if someone's really there, if this is the moment where something happens to me, then I'm at least going to see what it is. So slowly, I reach under my pillow. My fingers find the flashlight. The second I feel it, I click it on and whip the blanket off like I'm ripping off a bandage. And nothing. Nobody. No shadow, no shape, no cat, no person, no anything. Just my room. Empty. Quiet. Like it had been empty the whole time. I completely lost it. I jumped up and ran out to the hallway light switch near the bottom of the stairs and flipped it on so fast I almost missed it. Then I went back to my bed and just sat there, wide awake, staring, waiting for something else to happen. I stayed like that for hours, literally until my dad got up for work. He walked past, saw my light on, and got irritated, like, "Why is your light on again?" Because apparently this wasn't the first time I'd panicked in the middle of the night and turned every light on like my life depended on it. And then he just went to work, like it was nothing. And the craziest part? It never happened again. Not exactly like that. Other strange little things over the years, sure, but not the footsteps, not the breathing, not the bed dipping like someone sat down at my feet. And I still don't know what it was. All I know is, it didn't feel like a dream. It didn't feel like sleep paralysis either, because I could move. I moved when I reached for the flashlight. I moved when I ran for the light switch. But when the light came on, there was nothing. Just silence. Like the house had swallowed the whole thing and decided to pretend it never happened.